Lord, we thank you for the blessings you bestow on us. Lord, I pray that today you will bless our commissioners with wisdom and prudence in the decisions they make. Lord, I pray that all who come here today will do so in a respectful manner. Lord, keep us mindful that you created the heavens and the earth, and that you, sir, are still totally in charge. Let your will be done, Lord. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Administrative business, Tina?
Okay. I have the minutes of February 11th.
Okay, you've all had time to review the minutes. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the February minutes.
Second.
Move by second. Move second by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. In your packets, you did have the January clerk's report and some department budget reports.
Our cash balance has been trending down.
I don't have the previous year information here to be able to answer that for you at the
Okay.
moment.
Sometime down the road.
Yep, I
We
can
might
get
as well
that.
Keep our finger on
Keep a
that.
comparison from this year.
Right.
Okay. We do have some change orders.
Not so many today.
Nope.
You had that in your packet, I think. Did you want to see those, Diane? I think they were in the packet.
Oh, no, I haven't. I've seen them. Just one?
One.
Okay, and then just a reminder of some upcoming things. On February 22nd, which is Friday, at 7 p.m., was that public meeting for the burning resolution the fire chiefs are holding. That's at the Scout House in Hillsborough. And then next week, we do have two meetings, on Monday and then our payday meeting on Thursday. And I also, I think that there's a CDDO meeting at 4 o'clock on Monday. And I also had on the schedule a SCED meeting and MidCap on the 28th, on Friday. So that's next week. Or,
Friday,
excuse
the
me,
SCED
Thursday.
meeting is a Thursday, yeah.
Not Friday. So the 28th, Thursday, I show a SCED meeting and MidCap. Just by the schedules that they have at the beginning of the year,
Yep.
so I want to make sure.
Ran into that several times.
Okay? And that's really all of the administrative business I have today.
Okay. I don't know if Jesse, you found out here yet?
I had Sherry call to see if he can come up early.
Okay.
He'll be up shortly. He's on the phone right now. Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple, 2 or 3 things here. Just getting back on the crushed concrete. I don't have many choices there. I have talked with KDOT, and it sounds like they're willing to work with us about dumping the material on their state strip north of Lincolnville, which isn't far off for them to haul. They don't want to go any further than that area. They got a place north of 340th, a private landowner on the west side, a half a mile north, Tom Sabota. They've been wanting to go there and dump the material. But Tom Sabota, he would like to have some kind of a 4-year agreement that we'd have it out of there after 4 years. I don't see a problem with that. I think we could have it out quicker. I know Diane was asking about some of the prices. They said it's roughly like if they were to haul, and they said they're really not going to haul, but $2 per cubic yard. Their trucks average around 8 cubic yards per load. So the whole project is about 13,000 cubic yards, which is $26,000 extra hauling it somewhere to a location. But Joe Halleck with KDOT is going to get back with me either this afternoon or early tomorrow on that state strip just north of Lincolnville, and Emery Sapp is interested in that too as well, going there. And then, he's just going to talk with his guys and then see what kind of agreement we can have, how long we have to get it out of there, or, something like that, if we're still interested. Come to find out, Burkamp must have been driving by or seen something, and he got in the middle of it. I thought they were contracted with Emery on the whole project. That's not true. So the crusher person is anyone who we choose, whoever we choose to have the concrete crushed. So that's what I've been doing as well, is trying to find companies that crush concrete for people to see if there's better rates than what he's kind of shooting at $7 to $8 a ton for crushed concrete. So I've been on the phone doing that. I have not got any more quotes back yet. I'm trying to get a hold of APAC. They're one of them. Also, Boats Parga out of Newton. They have 2 magnets set up on their machines. They did a nice job for the city of Hillsborough a few years back, so I contacted them. They're going to give me a quote. So yeah, as far as the crusher, that's where I got mixed up. I thought they were part of the contract on that. The other thing to consider is KDOT is already working on, from 340th coming south next year, they're already working on a fall bid for that concrete stretch. That would be even closer towards Lincolnville or the state strip that we would pile up now. If we bailed on this deal now and waited till next year to have this more lined out, he said it's probably going to happen to go and rip that concrete section out too. And it sounds like from 340th to Lincolnville is that concrete stretch that they want to rip out next year.
So they're doing 3 miles this year?
Going north of 340th.
North of 340th.
And then next year, they're going south of 340th.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the state contractor will haul it to that strip then? And then whoever we would have would crush it at that strip?
That's what I'm trying for, and that's
Okay.
what I told Joe, yes. The other thing to think about is that's why I've been building a concrete pile out at the south shop. I don't have near the concrete yet to come up with anything like 25,000 ton of material once it's crushed. But that's what I've been building towards, is something for the county to have in case we build any buildings for a pad, or we need to do any base work on roads. You know, that was the ideal of us creating a concrete pile at the south shop for the future, to have a crusher come in. So,
Did you happen to talk to Joe? There's a pile of already concrete from the old project at Florence sitting on the road. Are they still gonna crush that, or?
that I don't know. I have seen that concrete pile. I have not, like when we've had buildings knocked down and stuff like that, only concrete rubble's I've been allowing people to dump in that. As far as us doing those projects of having someone tear something down, or us, we're just adding a lot to it. And I got more piles to go pick up in some of our other lots, but there's a lot of options here. I just didn't know how quick we wanted to get on this one, or
Sounds like we'll have the ability to get quite a bit of it,
yeah.
at least in the near future,
Yeah.
if we're interested in it.
Did you say there was 25,000 tons of this concrete available, or how much was it?
Once they crush it, you'll have 25,000 ton of crushed concrete available
Okay.
in a pile that we'll take from.
And did I just hear you say that it's gonna cost about $26,000 to haul?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. If we don't use one of those two spots, but it sounds like they're not even gonna give us that option of hauling anywhere we would like them to. Even if we were to pay that 20, they wanna get it out of their trucks and keep on with the project as soon as possible. So they're gonna find some place to dump it nearby.
So we may not pay that.
We may not pay that if
Okay.
we get those, if we would choose one of those two
Okay.
locations.
Okay,
If KDOT allows us in there for it, so.
I see.
Otherwise, it's left to Tom Sabota, the private owner, and then he's just wanting to work on an agreement that he gets 5,000 ton of material, and then we get the rest, and we do some kind of like 3-4 year agreement that we would have it out of his property within that time.
So his compensation for allowing us to sit there is approximately 5,000 tons of the material crushed?
That's what he's, yeah.
25,000 tons sounds like a lot of material, but in essence,
It can go quick,
you could use a lot of it.
yes.
So, I mean, conceivably, you could be looking at 50,000 tons within the next
Correct.
2 years.
Correct.
Where are you, do you have any availability to screening, sorry, not screening, but millings at this time? Have
Yeah.
you heard anything about
We
millings?
have a little bit of pile now ourselves, but SPS out of El Dorado, they're about $15 a ton for millings. I have also put the county on their list. If they have a project in McPherson or anywhere nearby where they're gonna grind some up, that would be a quicker haul for them, which would be a lot cheaper than $15 a ton. So he has a list of people in areas, and I put the county's name and number down on that list as well for millings.
And that's the only location you have at this time?
Right now, that's all I have for
They're
millings.
kind of hard to get a hold of, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. When KDOT has them, they don't sell them. So,
I've seen, isn't there a great big pile of them out here?
yep,
I've seen that.
yep. And they won't let, I've tried several times to get it. One time, Corneo tried to sell it to me because they're the ones that did the roundabout area. They tried to sell it to us for, I think it was $5 a ton. But come to find out, KDOT stepped in and says, no, you cannot, that's our material, you cannot sell it. And you're not. So, we lost out on that deal, especially when it was fresh.
Okay.
What do you think, Jesse, I've never seen the base built with it yet. I mean,
These
I have
contractors are saying that's the way they're going.
I just
That's
haven't seen it.
all I have, you know. And then also looking at the dry concrete powder stabilization like we did to Roxbury Road. That's kind of the aspect, but we're gonna be getting 3-inch minus, 2-inch minus, something like that, kind of like, for the base, so.
Did you use any fly ash or anything in that, or is that not why it's not normally used in the base, or not?
Well, that used to be kind of what they call an old product, fly ash, as far as soil stabilization.
Okay.
Now, what we did on the Roxbury, they call concrete stabilization with a concrete powder, and then they rip that and water it, and it's watering and mixing everything 12 inches deep on that project.
And was that recycled concrete too, or was that new?
No, that's just new, like concrete powder. It's just
Okay.
like really fine dust.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So with a ground up concrete, do you use the same type of process where you would put it down and water it?
It would
So
help,
it would
yeah. Yeah,
Start
I mean,
to try to bind again?
if you're doing like I'm looking at the full rebuild, yeah, they say mixing your soil, your dirt, and having, 2-inch minus or 3-inch minus rocks, some bigger and smaller stuff with fines in it. It's all going to bind together with that water, packing it down, mixing, it's gonna all get mixed up when we're ripping that road and laying that stuff down in there. More than likely, right before we rip it, we'll probably do the same process, lay quite a bit of it down, and then just start ripping it, and then getting your form of your road, your shape, and watering it, and packing it, and getting your base going. You gotta keep packing it until that stops going down, and you just gotta keep adding material.
Have you heard anything at all about any testing or anything on the rock that we're buying? I have not been, I've been just, haven't
No,
done
I have,
anything.
I know that, Sam Harshman contacted me, and he said he's trying to get some of that taken care of as far as the testing, and I'm trying to come up with locations for him for possibly stockpiles in our county.
Is that really economical to do that? I mean,
What's
I
that?
could stockpile it at different places. I mean, load it, unload it, load it, unload. I mean, is that really economically the way to go?
Possibly not. I'm just worried, like, because I really don't have the locations, or we don't have the locations for very big stockpiles. And then if, I didn't know if you wanted me to reach out to landowners, but if I do that, then
Then it raises the cost, because they're gonna want
raises the
compensation.
cost, or they have tractors. I'm not saying they would, I'm just saying, what if they wanted to go get a bucket?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but what I would say is, and I've had some people approach me about that, but they do want compensation. So then,
Correct.
if you
And that-
buy it at a
correct.
cheaper price and then you pay to store it, you lost basically anything you're saying, and it's a lot of hassle.
Mhm.
So I'm asking, is all that worth it?
I don't
I almost say
feel,
no.
And these trucking companies I'm getting a hold of is, they're looking for stockpiles, because they need to get to their destination and get back.
Right,
And they're not turned away from it just due to the fact of if I had a road just right there off the highway that they're coming in on, but
it just seems to me, if you're gonna start stockpiling, you'd have to really be on the ball as to where you're gonna use it, because
I
you could
know.
get yourself into a heck of a pinch by all of a sudden you have to do something on this road when your stockpile's over here. And it would cost you by far more time and money.
and then if
To
my
access
loaders are
that.
tied up,
Yeah,
then I
there
don't
you
have
go.
a loader over there.
See, I'm just second guessing on that. I'm not convinced that that's the right way to go. For a lot of rock anyway, maybe a little tiny, but,
Yeah, and what that little tiny gets us, it won't get us very far,
right. So I'm not sold on
Doesn't
that
it
idea.
wouldn't it save some wear and tear on trucks, fuel and everything?
Well, as if we had stockpiles,
Yeah, if we had stockpiles.
I don't think they're still gonna have to eventually go to those spots, and, I don't see them.
I mean, the thing
savings.
is, I've heard the same kind of stories from people and saying, well, yeah, you don't have enough loaders, but there's always somebody around that's got a high loader.
Yeah.
It's close.
Well, I
They'd be
feel-
willing to load
yeah.
for you.
I think 3 high
But you gotta
loaders.
pay them.
Right.
See, they're not gonna do it for free, and again, then you're bumping your costs
Yeah.
up more and more, so.
I agree. I feel that we're getting ourselves into more pay.
I think we need to rethink that,
Okay.
just somehow, I don't know, just.
But anyways, that's what we've been talking about, that's what we've been discussing, so we're just trying to,
Yeah, I understand.
But I wouldn't wanna give up on the concrete though, when we've got that kind of opportunity.
okay. Well, I think I'll probably,
Especially if KDOT will work out something.
okay. I guess really, so we're still interested, I'm maybe gathering that, we're still interested in the crushed concrete, even if it goes to the private owner or the KDOT strip. And maybe working out those terms and deals with the private landowner.
I would wanna know the information on that, what it's gonna cost us.
Correct.
But
Well,
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's worth continuing to study and research.
as far as
that.
the private landowner, it would cost us whatever the crusher's gonna come in and crush the material.
And what they're gonna
Either,
charge us
either
to
way,
store
it's
it.
gonna cost us on that.
They're not gonna charge us as long as they give us, or if we give them 5,000 of that 25,000 ton.
But we're paying for that 25,000.
Correct,
We're
we're
paying for
paying
that
for that.
5,000 tons.
That's
paying
what
for
it's
their
gonna
credit.
So
cost
it's
us,
gonna
yes.
cost, okay.
Yes. So we're so it sounds like after today and tomorrow, I should have more answers from Joe and then Emery Sapp and Son.
So I guess what I would say, if we're getting 25,000 at $7 to $8 a ton to crush it, and we're gonna give 5,000 of it away, then actually that 7 to 8,000 is gonna cost us, for the 20,000 more that we have left is gonna cost us more, in essence.
Correct, because
Okay,
5,000 is going away.
Yeah, okay. I understand.
5,000 times,
Fine.
times.
It's $175,000
Yeah,
for,
I'm just seeing what we pay for to have it stored somewhere.
What-
5,000 times, and we're paying for the crusher, and we don't know what the crushing's gonna be yet, correct? 5 to 6,
you know, this, right now we're looking at 7 to 8 is what I've been quoted.
So $8 times 5,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of money for storage.
40,000 for storage.
So then you add that dollar to what we're paying to the remaining 20,000, you better push a pencil.
And then we do a 4-year agreement or 3-year and I get it out in 1 year. Well, we kind of just really took it in the pants.
Exactly,
You know what I mean?
exactly, yes, yes. I mean, there's a lot to figure out there.
Okay, well, we'll keep
Just-
talking back and forth. I know Emery's needing an answer quick, but I can't give him an answer yet until we get this
Just
all
keep us
lined up.
informed.
Okay. Is it okay that I call you three on this issue throughout the week if I got some questions or they need some more answers or?
Fine. Honestly.
Yep, you have that freedom.
State could save us 40,000 if it took it all there.
I'm sorry?
State could save us $40,000 if they would take it all there. What it comes down to.
I mean, that's a huge amount of money to
Yeah, it
spend.
kind of depends on what KDOT will do.
Yeah, depends on what KDOT wants to do.
Yeah.
So, the other deal on my agenda is, wind farms. The Diamond Vista, the one up north. Tanner with Kirk and Michael has spoke with John Beck and Steve, and they're no longer on the project. They are out in West Texas on another project, so they will no longer be here. They want this $25,000 fine to go away, plus these other recent fines. Supposedly, they were gonna send a check out for the $25,000 for that 290th stretch Friday. And they were gonna check as well, I think Tanner's gonna look this week or get with Tina, see if anything else has come in at the end of this week for the recent truck fines. There are new construction managers on the job. Their first names are Reno and Blake. So they want to have a meeting with us tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. With myself, Brian Fry, Tanner Yost. But yeah, they did not let us know that they changed construction managers, and now that this has all come to a head and we found out that John and them are out of state, they want to meet with us now tomorrow at 8:30. So I do intend to go to that meeting tomorrow, because they want to discuss the remaining construction schedule and also the post-construction inspection that will be coming up here soon. So,
So they're not gonna wanna discuss fines and stuff, right?
well,
Because
That I
there should
don't
be no
know.
discussion on that. That's in our road maintenance
yeah,
agreement.
it should. So I think Tanner feels that he thinks he has it under control, but that's talking to two people that's no longer at the site. So it's going to have to be talked about tomorrow.
And see, you know, this is just the beginning from changing.
Yeah,
And I
we-
don't think that we should have to be chasing after our money. I really don't.
It's just like Trade Wind started it, and I knew the day that things were signed, we wouldn't see them again. We haven't seen Trade Wind since.
And they're not abiding by a lot of the agreement. It's just,
That's the information I have, I told you I'd come back this week with whatever I had, and Tanner's been trying on the ball to get these fines paid. They said the big one is in the mail, or gonna be in the mail Friday. Of course, the recent ones with the trucks, they have up to 30 days to pay them, so we
And
still
what we have seen is typically they pay on the 30th day after they get the notification. That's what they've been doing on everything.
That seems
The
normal
whole
there.
time,
Yeah.
so.
Just encourage Tanner to keep their feet to the fire.
And see, this is one of the things I say, thank God that we hired Kirk
Yes.
and Michael.
Correct.
Because without them, the county would be up the creek.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been such a blessing.
Last thing with Wind Farm, I had a phone call from a gentleman with Expedition. They want to have a preliminary meeting with me tomorrow sometime here at the courthouse in my office for the one between Florence and Peabody. So sounds like it'd be just one of them preliminary meetings like I had way before Diamond Vista ever started. And they just want to discuss possible road maintenance agreements, which,
So I have a question on that.
okay,
And actually I have a problem with it. I really don't know that from our experience up here at what we're experiencing right now with trade wind, I think we need to have more people in the county involved in those agreements if they're gonna go on with the agreement. I don't like, because, but here's what happened, here's my experience up north. Those road maintenance agreements were done over there in planning and zoning and with a handful of people. Whatever you guys, now yes, we got the end package, okay? But then all this stuff that's happening up north, the people didn't know about it. The county got a bad rap. We didn't know what they were talking about. They're not abiding by it. And I learned an awful lot from what happened up there. And I don't want to get in that same position again. So I think going forward, instead of having just a few little people talking about the maintenance agreement, we need to all be on board with it.
correct. And I think when there's no agreements getting taken. You know me, I'm not gonna go sign something or
No, I'm not
approve
saying you
anything like
are.
tomorrow. But what I'm liking out of this expedition is they're from the United States. They are saying that they will stay the owner and operator of this project all the way from right now for 5-10 years of this project. That's the one thing I hated about the agreements over there in planning and zoning for this Diamond Vista, because Tradewind knew they already had that sold to Enel. Enel was never there for any of those agreements, and they needed to be, because Tradewinds didn't have a clue what road they were going to use.
But if you look at the history
But
of
in the-
wind turbines, that's the pattern.
Correct, and I understand that's the pattern. I feel the owner and operator needs to be at those agreements so we know what roads they would possibly want to use. It's just like the dumb hiccup up north, as far as, well, the county wouldn't let us use certain roads. We would have used the railroad system right there through Tampa. You never asked us in the agreements. No one ever talked about the railroad system. That would have been ideal. I mean, for some things, I would assume, using some of the city streets, I mean, things would have got tore up, but if you
So-
wanted to use it.
Having said that, have you talked to anybody else up north about the roads? Because this last week and a half, I've talked to several. And there are people up there, and I'll mention names if you want, I don't care. Nothing, I'm transparent as can be. But there are people up there who are really pissed because, and they're on the haul routes.
Okay.
And they've got good roads, they're not gonna dispute, they got good roads. But the semis are flying by their houses, going 50, 60 miles an hour, all this type of stuff. So they're bringing tractors and stock trailers and stuff out of their property and stuff. And I mean, these people also, I'm trying to tell them, and I've been in contact with Kirk and Michael and Tanner and them about this. So on this one, and this is on, what is that road? It's just south of 330th. That would be
320.
320. So you know which mile I'm talking about right there. So you have Kenny Croper on that road. Now he received a wind turbine, okay? And he's on the haul route. And he has a nice road, he's going to tell you that, but he is one torqued off guy,
Okay.
okay? And so he's already going down to Hutchinson and talking about the wind turbines, and wants to come here. It just so happens that with the storm coming in, he couldn't make it today, but I'm telling him, you're on the haul route. We cannot be on that road. So, Nell or whoever it was gave him a speed limit sign,
Okay,
which is an illegal sign,
correct.
okay? But it's there. Well, the truckers, you know, they just come and go what they want. They're not our local guys. They're outsourcing people, and they're flying by. Okay, we have no control over that. So the people up there are feeling like, well, you bad old county, you should have the sheriff up here doing this for us. Well, you know, so people don't know what's going on, and our hands are tied, and you're having neighbor turn against neighbor now, and it's getting bad. And it's all this little stuff that people don't understand, and there's a lot of moving parts in this that's affecting everybody that we're living with now. So, I mean, I don't, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that's what I was dealing with this last 2 weeks. And our hands are tied, and that's why I say we need to be more a part of the road maintenance agreement,
I
because
agree.
I learned a lot. If I was in that road maintenance agreement thing, I wouldn't have went with half of it, and I would have surely applied a whole lot more to
I agree.
protect our people who have signed up and people who have not signed up.
Correct, I agree.
That up there is kind of a bad deal.
I know there's been a lot
I
of,
do-
it's mostly independent contractors that are coming up there and picking up stuff off the way down yard and that kind of thing, and I just don't think they were probably communicated.
But that's no
Correctly.
excuse, Kit. That's no excuse.
I
When
know
you
Well,
work
it's not
with
an excuse, but
contractors
that's just what's
and stuff,
happening.
well,
And I know that
That's-
there was an email that went across about speed limits from Kirk and Michael to Annelle last week. So I had a feeling that there was
that's where
complaining
that's
of
going
going on.
And do you remember early on in the spring, or was
We
it?
had the problems of speeding and dust.
Yes, and we were gonna try to get this electrical sign from the
Uh-huh.
city and so on,
Yeah.
but then through all the different things, we couldn't do
They
it.
told me to stop because
Right.
they wanted to put up their.
But we tried.
Yes.
We tried. Well, so you get the property owners up there, they don't wanna hear, we tried, but we can't. You know what I'm saying? We do everything we can, but it's just one of those
Yeah.
deals.
I think once, if, you know, agreements go further with this, possibly the new one, if one does come in, I feel very strongly there's gotta be more people involved, with this. You know, I didn't like the way the other one went down as far as agreements, cause we got a bad rap, the county
We
got a
got
bad
it.
rap,
We got it right in the butt, we sure did. We got shafted.
so.
And we're not gonna make any big economic impact from it, like they promised us the stars and the moon, and I've been pushing the pencil to what kind of economic impact are we getting? Not what I expected. Not what I understand we were told anyway. And I was at all those meetings.
What else you got for us, Jesse?
The only thing I have is, I'd like to request a 5-minute executive session with you three, personnel performance, if possible.
Can I ask a quick question?
That's up to you.
Give on those
Can I
rest of
ask
the
a quick
questions.
question?
Okay.
How long do they have to fix those roads up there the way they were supposed to be?
That's what the post-trip inspection is about tomorrow, the post-trip inspection meeting. So that means Kirk and Michael and Annelle and Rez, they're all gonna start going over video and photos of everything, of what it was before. There's also, I got a list of things that my blade men are concerned about, as well as some landowners are concerned about, some areas that they think they kinda have fixed, but my blade men aren't happy with them, so, as well, so it's a concern. So, it's, in a way, it's starting now, and it's only gonna get thicker now as far as the post-trip, and the arguing's gonna begin. I mean, that's just, so,
And we'll wait and see what they're actually gonna fix.
yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, I've called them I don't know how many times, so.
Okay then. I'll move that we recess into executive session in order to discuss matters of personnel. So it's KSA 75-4319. Okay, go ahead, Darrell.
Okay. First, thank you for allowing me a little time here to say thank you. And that's the first thing we want to do is to thank you for including us in your budget every year and allow us to use all the dollars we get in donations to buy food for neighbors. And that's what we do it. So we hope that you'll continue to provide that $5,000 every year. It covers our utilities. It's pretty close to being right on target. So I hope you'll continue to do that. What you have before you is a summary. It's the last summary that Gene did for us at the end of the year. This shows how many neighbors. That's what we call the people that shop at our food bank still. And the number in the top chart, in the second row, under total, that's 7719. That's how many neighbors went through the food bank, total number in this last year. And a little reminder of what that means. People that use our food bank, the only requirement is they live in Marion County, and we'll make them prove that, to give us an address, something, and need some help with their groceries. We have no income requirement, nothing like that. We just, if you need some help with your groceries, and one of the things we tell people, we cannot be your sole source of groceries. We just can't do that. We couldn't keep up. But we do now, thanks to the generosity of this whole county in supporting the food bank, either in cash or in commodities. Every time we get really low, something happens, and we're flooded with stuff. It just happens. I used to worry about that, but about 3 years ago, I quit doing that. God just supplies. It just happens. The top chart there is just the number of neighbors who have gone through the food bank. The first column is the number of families, then the number of total neighbors, then seniors, males, females, children, new families that have come during that month, and then totaled out to the edge, or the grand totals across the bottom. The totals across the bottom and in the corner don't exactly match. We do all this by hand so far, except when Gene puts it on a report. But it's very, very close. Any questions about that top chart?
So on your total number of served, that's individual, or are you counting the same people a couple times maybe?
Well, they're eligible to come every 2 weeks. So a person could get counted twice in 1 month.
Okay.
But very few come all the time 2 weeks.
Actually, that's an amazing number. That's over half of our county population. That's amazing.
But some of them are doubled. I should have mentioned that.
Okay.
You can come every 2 weeks.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
Even at that, that's still serving a lot of people.
A lot of people.
Well, look at the new families, for the year, we had 110 new families for a total of 315 people that have never been to the thing before. So,
And I always get the question, and I'm not anticipating I'll get it here, but I'm going to say about it anyway. Anybody gaming you, Jerry? I said, well, they may be, but I don't think so. And the best way I know how to answer that is to invite you to come and spend 1 hour, either Monday morning or Thursday evening, and see what our volunteers, and we've got a tremendous bunch of volunteers, who go with our neighbors as they shop the food bank. They don't just go around and grab. Our volunteers are there. And what has happened over the years, and we're into the 5th year now since we moved up on Main Street, is that the people who are regular neighbors coming to the food bank, quite often as our volunteers are going around with them, we'll ask them, "What, do you need peanut butter this month? Do you need this?" And they'll say, "No, I still have some of that left from the last time I was here." That didn't happen to start with because they weren't sure how long we'd be there. But into our 5th year now, they're pretty familiar that we're going to be there when we say we're going to be there, and we'll have something for them to eat. The bottom one is where the people come from the various communities in our. Of course, some of those people don't live in communities; they live out on the edges of communities. But whatever address they give us, that's how we record them. Out to the right is a percentage of people in each of those communities that visit the bank. Any questions about that bottom, where the folks come from?
No, that's an interesting thing, yes.
They're coming from everywhere.
Can I go back to the top one again?
Sure.
Because what is your thought as to what generated the new families and the new people that you served, the 315?
Most of them are people that have moved into the county.
So you're thinking
new
that our
ones.
population has went up at least 315 maybe?
word of
Pretty
mouth.
nice. It'd be nice.
Yeah.
So I was asking what drives them,
Yeah.
why the increase?
Why they now live in the county, or why are they coming to the food bank?
Or why are they coming to the food bank?
Oh, it can be all kinds of things. Sometimes it's because they're living on the edge anyway, and they had a car breakdown or a medical expense, and they had to make the decision to fix that car, or do I go to the grocery store? That's the kind of folks we want to help.
It's not necessarily that they're new to the county.
No, that's
No, not
correct.
necessarily.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, and I didn't mean new to the county, but new to the
Yeah,
food bank.
to the food bank.
Yes. Okay, so you
I
got my
misinterpreted
question.
that.
Thank you.
Thanks for clearing that up. Any other questions?
Just appreciate what you do. It's a great service to the county, and you've got a great staff.
We do. They're tremendous.
It is a great.
Volunteers that work every week or one time a month or just whatever they can spare, but they always show up when they say they're going to.
Thank you. It's wonderful.
If you're not busy this afternoon, we're offloading the truck at about 12:30.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what the Wichita Food Bank delivers.
And so much of it, I mean, a lot of it is free stuff. You know, all of our bread that we get, all of the potatoes and fresh fruits and everything, they charge us nothing for it.
How they get them is when the Walmarts and the Costco's get up against the date on something, it goes to that warehouse and they freeze most of it. All the bread and pastries get frozen, and then it comes to us. That means for potatoes, we gotta get rid of them pretty fast, or they're gonna go to the transfer station. Any other questions? Again, we thank you for the time, the opportunity, and hope you'll continue to support us, so
Thank
we
you.
don't have to spend donated money on like this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys,
Got one.
Yes.
Did you get one of these? Yeah.
Okay, families and communities together update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
All right. Kind of small writing. Might have to put your glasses out. So thank you for having me again. We are so thankful for having the county support for years and years and years, and we hope that you will continue to do that. Just like what the food bank representatives were saying, we couldn't do any of this without the county support. None of us that are just trying to fight the good fight. So we really do appreciate it. So we'll go over just the general overview of FACT, because I haven't done that in a while with you guys, and then I'll kind of go over the report. So we're a local nonprofit, and we're serving all 5 school districts. You can see our board members listed out there. We try to get the county represented, obviously, so we have Max Heinrichs, USD 410. Bryant Miller represents Prairie View, since Prairie View serves the whole county. Todd Heichman, Marion. Aaron Homburg is USD 408. Lori Husuhu is our representative from the special ed co-op, because they serve the whole county. And then Susan Robson is also on there from Marion. So we are in the process right now of recruiting someone from Center, and the principal there has shown interest. So we just hired a part-time grant writer, which is nice, because I've still only been 2 days a week this year. I started in January, so I've been there a year. And I've basically been doing family support and just trying to get FACT financial support. So it's nice to have somebody that can just focus on grants. So one of the big things that we do is the family financial assistance. And so when families call 211, that is automatically forwarded to my FACT cell phone. And so, because Marion County doesn't have a United Way. So that's how we get the calls. We also help with school supplies, diapers, fuel cards. We do $10 fuel cards if they have like a doctor's appointment out of county, or just, you know, like a job interview or something like that. Sometimes they're coming from Peabody or somewhere outside the county, and we will give them a $10 gift card. We limit that to $30 a year, and so we keep track of that. We also print the Marion County Family Resource Directory, which is this little book you may have seen. We just got funding for the 2019 printing, so I'm super excited about that because we didn't get to print that in 2018. So those are a little bit outdated. This one is updated and getting ready to print from Bigger Brothers, so that's exciting. We have the Marion County Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. That's the coalition that manages the special alcohol tax fund that we also get for FACT. And so that is just a line in our budget. FACT doesn't get any of, like, I don't get any of that money towards my salary. We agreed on that years ago. It's just a line in our budget, and then that coalition approves it. And we get applications from schools for after prom, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, anything like that, and the coalition approves those at our monthly meetings. So we also, I'm trying to think of what all in my report, I'll go over that here in a minute, of some recent things that we've done with that. That coalition also manages the Kansas Communities That Care survey. That's all 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders take that survey. And it's like high risk, talks about drinking, drug use, all that kind of stuff. And so we see, and it's anonymous, you know, so, and it goes through Greenbush, which serves the whole state of Kansas. And so it's reliable data because, I mean, they do this for the whole state of Kansas. And so we use that survey data to see the needs. Right now in Marion County, it's still just drinking. Binge drinking and underage drinking is what, it's not the hard drugs or anything like that. It's still drinking. Some of the other coalitions throughout the state are focusing on marijuana, you know, opioids, that kind of stuff. But right now we're still focusing on drinking and tobacco use.
When you get the report back from that, did you say Marion County report?
There's a Marion County report, and then it's also broken up into school districts. And there's a state. Yeah, but they do it. They break it up into the county, and that's public knowledge. The school districts, the superintendents are the ones that have access to that. So, and I would definitely be happy to send that to you guys too. It's neat to look at. We host town hall meetings. We just had a town hall meeting in Gossel, and we had actually 99 in attendance to that meeting, which that's our biggest town hall meeting we've ever had, even when I was here before. We provide funding for local law enforcement, like training, banners, educational, PR, events and activities that promote healthy behaviors, alcohol and smoke-free environments. So just anything that we feel like needs to be done, you know, we try to work together as a coalition to do those things. We also have Marion County Circles under our umbrella. I am not over that. Mark Rogers is the coordinator for that. We donate our time from our fiscal agent for that. And there's actually 2 current classes right now. There's one in Marion and one in Peabody. And I think Gossel is wanting to start one too, so that's all in process. And then since 1999, we've brought in over $2.3 million in grants. We have got back into our local community foundation grants in 2018, so that was exciting. Hillsborough provides family financial assistance to the Hillsborough families, or anyone in the USD 410 district. And then Peabody's the same way. They provide family financial assistance to the families in that school district. And in Gossel, we wrote a grant for a community event there. So that's one thing that we got back going this year. You can see our funding sources listed there. I have Marion County listed for our yearly contribution and also the special alcohol tax funds for the coalition. Marion County school districts, they all donate $2,500 a year through the Team Network. And then we also get payroll deductions from some employees. We have received the Marion County Toy Run funds for several years in the past, well, this year and several years before that. And then just obviously local donors, businesses, churches. So yeah, that's just a quick overview of some of the things that we do. Basically, we do whatever needs to be done. If a family calls me and says, or parents of teachers calls me or whoever and says, you know, this family needs a baby gate. I even went to Ramona a couple weeks ago and took some baby gates because parents of teachers said this is not a safe environment. and there's stairs, and there's a baby, and there's no baby gate. So, and I mean, in Ramona, they don't, you know, they're out there. So, I mean, it's a lot of miles. So, I drove and gave them a baby gate. So, anything that needs to be done, we do it. So, if you want to look at our report really quick, I know I'm running out of time, but 44 families received family financial assistance in 2018, which was about $5,600 almost. And you can see the numbers broken out there. So Hillsborough was 12 families, which was 27%. Peabody was 12 families, and Marion was 10 families. So those are the communities that we serve the most with family financial assistance. And then you can see there's a few from the outlying communities. We also provided school supplies for 15 kids and holiday support for 4 families. When families call us to try to get, like on the Angel Tree, I will tell them what Angel Tree is available to them. But some families that are in the really rural communities, if they can't get on an Angel Tree, then that's where those families come from. We help them. And then other things we've helped with is diaper, fuel cards, and baby gates. Our coalition, we've been working this whole year on capacity building, because without that we can't get grants. So that's what we've been working on. And I would love for any of you to join our coalition. We had Dan Holland on our coalition years ago, and so we're missing that. So I might shoot an email to each of you and see if any of you are interested. We only meet once a month, and it's over the lunch hour. So that would be helpful. The town hall meeting that I talked about was 99 in attendance. We had law enforcement collaboration with that, and we discussed the communities of care survey data that I talked about. And what was nice is the principal was there, and he was able to pull the school district data and tell the families about what had been happening in Gossel. So we did a daddy-daughter dance in the spring last year, and we plan on doing that again. And we had over 120 in attendance. We got our resource directory fully funded for 2019. And then, like I talked about, the community foundation grants again. We also got the city of Marion to donate a yearly contribution. So they're going to donate in 2019, starting in 2019, $2,000. So now I will move on to some of the other cities in the county. And we had some Giving Tuesday events. And then I presented to St. Luke and asked them about payroll deductions, and we had 3 employees sign up. So that's $22 a month that we'll be getting from St. Luke. So just been working on trying to get everything going again.
Wow, you do a lot.
Thank
You don't have, in your presentation, all the good things that you do. I didn't hear anything at all about prevention or treatment of any of these type of alcohol or drugs,
Right, so,
or whatever.
but I did say Prairie View is on our coalition. Well, they're on our board, and they're also on our coalition.
Okay, and
So
I
they're
understand
represented.
Prairie View, but I was
Mhm.
just wondering what so
Well,
you just do everything through them.
Yeah, well, we're just trying to do events and things that we can do with the funds that we do have to promote prevention. But other than that, we have to rely on. I mean, if we had a grant specific for that, we could definitely do it. Like somebody to go in the schools and work with youth or something like that, we could definitely do it, and that's what we're working towards. But we just don't have a grant right now specific to that.
I see. Okay,
So.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Is the grant writer new to you then?
He is. He just started in January. He just started last month.
Was he hard to find?
Well, he's Terry Beavermeyer. Do you know? I don't know if any of you know him. He's from Hillsborough. He's been a retired English teacher. So we actually had several applicants. I was surprised.
Really?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
I know.
Because there's so much money out there.
Oh,
But if
yes.
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, there's gazillions of dollars, and grant
That's right.
writers are just
That's
worth
right.
every penny
Yes. Yeah.
and then some.
Yes.
So,
So that's exciting. Any questions that you guys have for me?
I'm glad to see you back to work.
Yeah.
She took a vacation to raise her family for a while.
Yep.
Just come back to work, so
Yep.
good deal to see you back.
Well,
Appreciate
thank
you
you.
coming in.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Oh, yes. Good to see you. I didn't chop it. Yep. Good to see you. Thank you.
Hey Travis,
Yes, I do.
good morning.
copies or is this?
I did, as long as I have one.
Okay, sounds great, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, I don't know if we got the runs up there. I think you all got a copy of our January 2019 runs. Totaled 113, which is the exact same as it was last year in January. I don't know how that happened, but it did. So we had the first response units. We had 5 first response calls out, and then looks like 113 would be our total for the month. So we're right where we were last year. We'll see how that plays out. So, and then I have this, the quarterly write-offs. Randy, if you could pass those down, I think. Yeah, there's one for Tina. So. While you'll see the write-offs there, and we'll need to approve those.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the write-off.
You went over them yourself and looked at everyone?
I did. Yep.
I'd make that motion to write off $8,892.02, and this will be from 17 clear through, well, 16, 17, and 18 back hills.
Okay. I would second that. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
With that, we have, kind of plays into it, we have sent Omni a letter, and we do a follow-up call to them this week. I haven't got a response. We did send a letter last week, which was per the contract we had with them to bring the billing back. Randy, you asked if I looked through those. I did, and I also noted that a lot of those were coming back at almost the statute time that there's not a lot we can do when we don't get the information right away. I really hope to see that number go down as we bring billing back in-house. Obviously, there are things that we're still gonna have write-offs. But I have worked with Jamie and visited a lot on set-off and ways to make collections work better once it's in-house. So I look forward to that getting better, and that number being less. So kind of a follow-up. We're working on Hillsborough getting a second unit up and running over there. That's coming along nicely, working with Ben with the fire department over there. I think we've kind of got it figured out. It's a fluid deal right now how it's going to work as far as staffing, but I think we're moving along well. So also in Hillsborough, the apartment, we're going to be out of Salem home apartment March 1st. I plan on the first part of next week getting into the apartment right north of the fire station. So that'll be a good thing to be that close. So we can start looking at shoot times and calls, that kind of thing. So it's time of year we're starting on ambulance inspections, getting stuff ready for relicensing in April. Going to be a busy time. We have one unit, one of the new units, A5, has to go back to the factory in Lynn, Missouri. Has a corrosion issue that wasn't maybe caught during the remount, so it's on them, but it's going to be about a week downtime. So again, the ambulance I'm going to give Hillsborough volunteers. I'm going to take away. So I don't, we're not really ready to do that full steam ahead yet. So I have a copy machine that broke down that we sent in, and we sent it in. They said it's not worth fixing. I'm in the process of getting 3 bids. I have 2 right now. I'll get another probably next week, so we can get the ball rolling on that. Excited to say that our full-time staff will be at full staffing the 22nd of this month, so that'll be Friday, I believe. So hopefully it'll be full staff, and that'll help my budget as far as overtime and that kind of thing. So that's pretty much what I have to report. Nothing too big. Questions, I guess.
What size is your copier? Is Is it a smaller one, or is it a?
It's a copy scan print, so, and it's pretty good size. I think it's doing around 38 pages a minute. We're looking at a couple that are in the lower 30s per minute. The one we have is 11 years old. It's,
Well, that's what my point, I guess, being is, of course, when we bought that, it was with the intention, you know, you have the billing there, but you're going to be bringing it back and
Right.
copying a lot more, and I just
correct.
make
And I
sure
think,
that you're.
yeah, I think this one, what I'm looking at, would do what we need it to with billing back to house, so.
Good, no, that sounds good to me.
Okay,
Thank you.
Sounds like you're
Thank
making
you,
some
Travis.
good
All right.
choices and some good decisions.
okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
How many more people do we have out
I
here?
don't know, it sounds like quite a bunch.
15.
15 more?
That's good. That's quite a bunch out there.
Do we handle that many?
No.
Sure.
I mean, they're gonna have to stand, there's no room for enough chairs for
Come
everyone,
in,
so,
come
yeah,
in.
yeah, that's all.
Find a spot, wherever you
Come on in.
can. A little more room up down this
Well,
direction.
maybe we get a couple more chairs so that some of them.
I'll be all right. I'll go out.
Does he need to sit down?
Position. I don't know that you're opposed. No, I appreciate it.
Is he okay?
Sit down here. Take my spot.
There's one more chair down here.
Younger people. There you go.
Oh, is that okay? Okay, over here.
Watch the clipboard.
You never let me stand over
You're young, you can do it, you're young.
there. Well, I'm sitting here. I just don't want to get in the way.
Yeah, come on in. Come on in. Come on in. Anywhere you find space.
Yeah, there's a little room back here.
Well, sure, well, I'll keep an eye over here if you want to say something so I'm not here. Okay? I'm sorry that we don't have the chairs.
Well, I can, there's a lot of chairs, I just don't think there's enough for everyone to sit down.
Is it okay if I would bring a couple?
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
bring
all right.
some.
Yeah.
We'll bring some in.
You can sit in here. Okay.
Can you just start printing your name?
Sure.
We'll get some more chairs.
Can everybody hear all right? Is there any more out there in the hall? One.
Yeah, there's several more out there.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Are we gonna get another chair or two?
Well, Tina's gonna bring some more chairs in for around here, and there's a few spaces there. So we can get some more chairs in here. Here we go.
Okay. Try to get everybody situated here before we get started.
You can just come right on over here as far as you need to. You come over all the way. Right.
Either one.
Ah, okay. Then we're safe.
Sit there.
That'll work.
Oh, okay. Good.
Can you check that camera, Yvonne? Is the camera okay? Nobody's interfering, okay.
Well, he's a little bit.
Okay, you're gonna have to move one way or the other for the camera.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's okay. That's
They
okay.
want to move over here and then.
You got space. You can come this way further.
This okay?
You can come this way further, that's fine, don't push, it's okay.
Okay, thank you.
There we go.
Okay, I think we've got everybody in here, so we'll go ahead and start the discussion on the proposed wind project. I might ask, is there a spokesman for the group, or is a number of you wanting to speak? Mr. Query?
I guess I heard about this only about a week ago. Could the commissioners give kind of a report as to what's going on with this wind farm and where it's at in the process and kind of just details with that? Or what you guys know?
Expedition was in last week talking to us about their overlay project where they moved the footprint farther west, and Of course, they haven't applied for their CUP yet, which I guess they plan to by the end of the month.
which is a change of.
Conditional use permit. At that point, then it will go into planning and zoning for a public hearing, which would be scheduled toward the end of March, the way we understand. Depending on that outcome, if that was approved at that level, then it would come to the commission for a final approval. So at this point, they haven't applied yet for their CUP, but the way they spoke to us, they intend to by the end of the month. And so, we do have a representative from Expedition here, Jesse.
Yes, sir.
This is Jesse from Expedition, and he said he would be available to answer a question if something comes up. But anyway, being used, there's a large group. I just wondered if there was a spokesman for all of you. If there was a number of you that wanted to speak, I'd ask that you try to limit it to 3 to 5 minutes to try to expedite and give people a chance to speak. So, not hearing that there's a spokesman.
I think overall it would be Stacy Jansen and myself.
Okay.
I probably will.
Randy? Okay. Okay, so I'll let Stacy go ahead.
Sure. Can I stand here? Would you like me to get to the hot seat? My name is Stacy Jansen, and I do live in Districts 1, and I own property in 3. I've been here for 6 years, but my husband was was raised here. My kids were 3rd generation rural Marion County residents, and I will speak on behalf of the group. We're just Jeremy and I, but what really is the most important thing here is I would really encourage the commissioners to get a moratorium on drilling permits, or wind permits. And that is because currently, and even at this moment, in Topeka, House Bill 2273 is it's in committee. It's from the Energy and Utilities Committee. What they're looking for is to increase setbacks. It's not against wind. It is for reasonable setbacks to protect rural citizens. Just this morning, I only could listen to about 45 minutes before I had to be here. But what they say is that this is a land issue. It's a land value issue. I cannot speak to everything that this is going to do to our citizens or our county or our state. But our state and our officials feel that it is that important that it is regulated at the state level because our local commissioners do not have the manpower, the finances, and just the correct information to be making this decision on their own as individuals. And so really, if I had to boil it down to one real reason, I'm asking to wait for legislation to be passed through, to let it do its due process in Topeka. Pros are being heard today. Thursday, they're hearing against it. I look forward to hearing that, but really what's been brought up are some health concerns from the testimonies. Noise specialists are coming in. They're finding that these companies are not being straightforward. And I don't think that's to our advantage. And so I'm worried for my children that this is going to get rushed through and we're going to see the detriment of this. Long-term effects really we can't be sure until we can really do a good job of looking at it. And I don't think that the Planning and Zoning Board has the same kind of oversight that you do, and you are here to protect us. Planning and Zoning is to issue permits. And so I think they're going to do a great job too, but I'm asking you as the commissioners to protect us and our land rights and our quality of living. The other thing, I worked for 10 years for Slawson Exploration, which does oil and gas drilling. I'm out of Wichita, Kansas, and I worked as an assistant to a landman, and I asked specifically, because I didn't think of any, what kind of gag clauses have we ever put? And we did sometimes issue gag clauses, and the reason was because we weren't treating all of our leaseholders the same, and we didn't want anyone to talk about it or talk negatively, but really it was because people weren't being treated the same. All of these do have gag clauses, and I would just say that actually prohibits you from getting all of the accurate information, and that's just that's a red flag that's been raised for me as a neighbor to these. And I do want to maybe just finish off by saying my property is 1.5 miles away from the road right now. I am also in a different planning to build my family's home that we've waited our whole lives to build, where we want to raise our kids, or we want to pass to our grandkids. My whole back house is supposed to be windows, and that's going to be those red lights, and I'm okay with that. It's the other things and people that are even closer that I'm worried about. And it's just, I'm just concerned. So I really am asking that you would do your due diligence, and I don't think that can happen without a real true moratorium and letting all of the things really come to light. I'll let you.
Thank you, Stacy.
Just to kind of echo what Stacy was saying, I probably represent.
Gotta stop you for a second.
Yes, you may.
We also need your names. Stacy Jansen.
Stacy Jansen.
Jeremy Lowen.
Okay, go ahead, Jeremy.
I'm a similar story to Stacy, I guess. Grew up my whole life here in Hillsborough. My wife and I are both from Marion County. And I probably stand here representing more of the agricultural side and more of the rural residents, maybe. Not any different than Stacy, but you know, to echo what Stacy was saying, I think as we look north to the Diamond Vista Wind Project, we have a prime example of how our existing zoning regulations maybe have not been sufficient in protecting the residents and the landowners up there. Lane Dick is a resident up there, and he actually shared his testimony, and that's being heard at the State House today. Basically speaking that the existing regulations were insufficient. Currently our setback from a non-participating residence is 1/4 mile. Lane and his wife have 5 turbines between 1/2 and 3/4 mile away from their home, and says that the noise is just atrocious. It's loud, it's unbearable at times, and you know, that's not a worst case scenario given our existing zoning regulations. And so, you know, there's a lot of people here who live in that footprint, in the potential expansion westward of that footprint, who are very concerned that they could not only be in the same situation as Lane and his family, but potentially even a worse situation where they could be in that 1/4 mile range and be a significant, pose a greater issue to health and safety as well as property values. I think the other side that's represented here is just the non-participating landowners who may not reside in that area, but farm, and a big portion of their business is in that area. And currently, those setbacks are at about 600 feet from property lines, which is going to significantly affect our ability to apply aerial application to those fields. And there's also a really big question about if and how wind turbines affect dicamba. You guys have maybe heard about dicamba. It's something that's relatively new, much newer to us than it is to the wind, than wind energy is to us. And I think there's some concerns out there, but there's not a lot of research that's been done as to what that means and the effects of that. We do know that wind turbines will throw a wind shadow, depending on the size of the turbine, 1/2 to a mile downstream. We have issues today with dicamba in much smaller ranges than that. And so we are significantly concerned that our existing zoning regulations are insufficient. And we would, I think, all support Stacy's recommendation that we look at this properly and issue that moratorium to give us the time to do that, and also to prevent National Renewable from going through all the work to apply under our existing zoning regulations, and then that be thrown out down the road. I think that's a responsible thing to do for National Renewable as well.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, is there others that want to speak? Now's your chance.
Yeah, I'll go
Randy?
ahead. Want me here or there?
Yep, come on up.
Well, my name's Randy Eitzen. Well, I would be a farmer in the southeast part of Marion County. I really don't enjoy I don't really enjoy speaking in a setting like this, but I just figure this is something extremely important that we all need to take a good hard look at. What the other two people before me have said really is right. I really think that one thing that you as commissioners need to take a look at is the majority of the people that have signed up so far are either absentee landowners or people that were just getting ready to retire. You know, they represent a fair amount of people, but I think you can look around here at the crowd this morning and see that probably don't represent, how would you say it, they don't represent the majority of the people that actually live in within the footprint of this proposed wind farm. One of the problems I see, let's just say that me and several of my neighbors don't sign up for this, and maybe on the other side of where we farm, there could be like 160 or 240 acres that all at once is signed up again. Okay, so then somehow to get their lines from one end of the wind farm to the other, they're still going to have to come across our property somehow. And, you know, it just isn't really fair to those of us who live in the area that, you know, we haven't signed up for it, because, I mean, I think all three of you will agree with me that we really do live in a beautiful county, and I would sure like to see it stay that way. So we're going to do what we can to try to protect it, and if somebody who's an absentee landowner that basically was given a contract and says, oh, just sign it, it's going to be a real good deal, and you've seen the contract, it's about that thick, and goes ahead and signs it. I just think you as commissioners need to let us have some kind of a recourse against situations like that. There's also the issue of once they, if this project does go through and they get their wind farm put together, somehow they got to get the power out here to the southwest power pool, I think we need to know first, before we do anything, where's that line gonna be? Who's it gonna affect? So there's about 2 places where eminent domain could take effect that they're just not telling you about, or that they don't want you to stop and think about. I know there's a lot of people have asked me, why are you so against this wind farm? Because I won't be here much longer. But what about this? What about Jeremy? And he's got 4 boys that would maybe like to farm some a day. I've got to hire a man that's got a 5-year-old. Well, whenever he sees me, he goes, I want to farm for you someday. I would just like to see all of the younger generation that we have here have a good opportunity to farm without going around a bunch of wind towers. And I think, Mrs. Jensen also said something about one thing we really need to take a hard look at is that there definitely could be some hard issues about health issues in regards to a straight voltage that we really need to take a hard look at. I guess that's really all I have, and if you want it,
Okay, thank you, Randy.
Okay, thank you.
Speak, sir.
Yes, state your name.
Larry Larson.
Hey, Larry.
I doubt there's anybody in this room that's been around windmills as long as I have. Altamont Pass in California was probably one of the first places we had wind farms, and they looked like egg beaters. They were 2-bladers, they were 3-bladers, they were 4-bladers. I have a sister and her husband who own 1,000 acres in the Altamont Pass, and they're completely surrounded by windmills. Do we need alternative energy? Absolutely. But we do have a responsibility to not only ourselves, but everybody else around us, our neighbors and our children, to make sure that we've covered it right. Several of the concerns that I have are, in the contracts in California, if the windmill business went out of business, or one particular windmill stopped working, they'd take it down, and I don't know what the new contract is here, but the footing stayed there. Who's going to pay to get that footing out of there? That's a problem. Those of you that are around oil well places that have gone away, some of those concrete bases are still there. Watchhorn is full of them down south here. And they're there forever because nobody can afford to take them out. So that's a concern that I have. They were killing raptors out there incredibly fast because as a raptor flies along and that blade comes around, they don't see it during the day. They're not looking for it. They don't know what it is. And at night when they're turning and birds fly at night, they were finding a tremendous amount of hawks and eagles underneath these towers. Why? They're flying into them and the blades are killing them. That's a concern that I have. We in Marion County have been privileged to have our national bird come back, and it's growing. We've got eagles around here now that we never had when I was a kid. And I would hate to have some sort of a problem there. I've been a paramedic for 32 years in this county volunteering. I have substantial hearing loss on consonants because of dual sirens on ambulances and air horns.
if I have a windmill close to me and that windmill is putting out, I don't know what they're budgeted for here, 75 to 80 decibels, that's not going to help me. I heard a story about somebody talking to somebody on the phone and literally had to leave his farmyard and go inside of a building just to hear the person he was talking to on a cell phone. That's an issue. That's affecting how I live. That's affecting my animals. And so I would agree on the moratorium to look into the raptor possibility, look into the decibel possibility, look into the encroachment on land through possible public domain to get those cables underground out of here or overhead out of here. There's a lot of issues that we need to look out for. And I would say 80% of the windmills that went up in the 70s are gone, but the foundations are still there. And these farmers that are still farming have to go around them. The farmers that have these high lines that go through their property are already having to go around them. But if we add more, these big pieces of machinery that we use now, we're not pulling a 10-foot disc, we're pulling a big disc, and it makes the turnaround hard. Somebody wants their agricultural land sprayed with air spray, it's a problem because maybe they can't get in because of the wind turbulence affecting how the plane flies, let alone the obstacle. I was a flight paramedic for Life Team for years, and as much as I love these sprayers, I hate them because we'd be flying along in the helicopter and they're just, you know, up and down, and that would be more erratic. I mean, we can see them from a distance and we know they're coming, but now if they're having to fly around obstacles, instead of just coming up and doing this, they're going to come up and, you know, and we in the helicopters, that's a problem. I don't want to have an aerial crash. I want to go home. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else?
Can we just ask questions too at this point? What kind of tax revenue would be from all these windows? What kind of tax revenue would the
The way we hear is 0 for 10 years.
Taxes in 14 years.
Is that correct back there?
Typically in a project like this, you do have an exemption that happens with the, the county's approval of the CUP. However, that is usually accompanied by a contribution that goes to the county as well. So it's called payment in lieu of taxes. And so usually it actually creates a net benefit to the local community because it doesn't send it to the state and then has to redistribute it from there. So the community gets the full benefit of the tax implications of the project.
And the wind farm up north, the communities, it was only the school districts that it affected was what they haven't done too much for the county.
Plus, I would also add, on your payment in lieu of taxes is not an enforceable thing. It's a gift. So you could pay it for a year and then say, screw you and not pay it anymore. So, I mean, it's not something that is a guarantee, like taxes are. And I also think that the payment in lieu of taxes is a fraction of the money that we'd actually receive if we had taxes. Also, I would also let the farmers and the property owners know that when the 10 years is up, if I'm not mistaken, and I did check this out, those properties that go around those wind turbines will be a mile around them, and they will be assessed at market value and taxed at commercial rate. So, the future does not look bright there, but just thought I'd let you know.
Another question?
One other question relating to property taxes. I guess some stats I read, properties around wind farms, valuations have gone down 10 to 40%. Has Marion County had any property taxes filed in protest as far as valuations around the wind farm north of Durham there?
Not that I'm aware of at this point. And of course, we haven't had any land sales either.
But also what I read on that, I'm sorry, but I've done a lot of study. Because I live in the heart of it almost, not quite, thank God, but close enough. But they say that does not give you actually property devaluation. If you live in a $100,000 home or property right now, even with the wind turbines, you still live in a $100,000 home. Your problem is when you go to sell it, you're going to not have the buyers. You're going to have to find somebody that loves to live in the middle of these wind turbines.
Like I
So-
said, it's gonna be some time
Yeah.
before we have any history on that yet in
Yeah.
this county. There is some history statewide.
Sure.
Well, that's just common knowledge, because if you don't like them, you're not gonna buy a house there, no matter how much you love the house. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Testimony this morning from Topeka actually had an appraiser from Neosho County that did, under testimony, say 20 to 40% decrease in their county of homes. I mean, you can listen to it after this.
I would be interested in that.
Residential properties you're talking about.
In the footprint.
In the footprint.
20 to 40% decrease is what he has found.
And I know down in Oklahoma, there are a lot of lawsuits right now, that there are attorneys that are popping up defending people in this position. I know of one that has a multi-million-dollar home and has lost a lot of money in the resale of that home. But I thought there was other things. I didn't get all the gist of it, but I've heard that. But
Well,
I
it also affects the use, like what he was saying. Presently, the way that the agricultural ground is appraised is based on some formula from the state, irregardless of how we can actually use it. And by these turbines being in place, not being able to aerial spray pastures or crop ground or whatever, that directly impacts the cost of production on our property. So, which is a use factor. That definitely needs to be considered.
Can you give her name?
Chase Gann,
Oh, just, yeah.
Gann.
Okay. Do we have anybody else that wants to make a comment? Now's your opportunity.
We were told that the sprayers would not come within a mile of any of the wind turbines.
I remember we had discussion on that when the other one, and there was a lot of your aerial flyers who won't even fly because of the danger. And so they're getting more pricey and harder to find people who will do what just used to come natural to do.
I spoke with Matt Orth here that runs the crop dusting service out of the Marion Airport, and I think there's a lot of different opinions as far as pilot to pilot goes on whether they will or will not. But what he indicated is that as far as the equipment goes, as far as the planes they're using today, they need a half to 3/4 of a mile beyond the property in which they're spraying to turn around, and they climb to elevations of 200 to 300 feet during those banks or during those turns. Troy might be able to speak to that a little bit as well. His brother actually flies with Matt out of the Marion Airport. But just as far as the equipment goes, so that takes out the pilot preference from that equation, and just to give an idea of where the equipment stands.
And that risk factor might drive up cost to do it.
It does.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I would just add to that, Glenn Liftke, in talking with Jeff Mayfield at Ag Service last week, I was at a meeting with him and Mike Kleiber on this issue, and he mentioned that even if you're a non-participant landowner, if I've got 80 acres of wheat that does not have a mill on it, but my neighbors on either side do, that crop duster or that company is going to charge me a surcharge if they are willing, first of all, to risk their life to come into my 80 acres between those two wind farms. But I would be charged a surcharge for the application fee, and I'm not even a participant, and I'm not benefiting at all from any payout because I don't have a windmill on my ground. But that was from Jeff Mayfield, and he had just done that research because he knew I was requesting a meeting with him. So that seems quite unfair to me that we would be charged that extra. And
I think, go ahead, Clay.
I'm just saying, we used, in my own operation, I haven't used a lot of aerial spraying until recent years, but in recent years, it's been every year, just about every acre of wheat that I produce. And they have a short window of time to apply that because of when it's in the dough stage or the heading stage of the wheat, when you have to put this fungicide on. And so if it happens to be muddy during that time, you don't want Ag Service or Co-op or whoever's doing your spraying to track it up in the mud. Aerial is your best option. It costs a little more to do that, but I'm happy to pay that extra because it doesn't track up the field, and I think they do a good job. But to not have that option because of either the neighbor's mill or my own mill, whatever, it would be a real detriment that way. So that's just one of many things that I would have on my list at some time wanting to share with the committee.
Drift could be an issue too.
Jeremy, you specified dicamba beans. Right. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, as far as the drift factor? I mean, I guess what you're saying is that there's a chance that these turbines could be pushing some of that.
So
Residue?
dicamba, let's start out with dicamba is a touchy subject because it's new and there's very strong opinions both ways on it. But the regulations as far as applying dicamba, we cannot apply dicamba in wind speeds below 3 miles an hour or above 10. You also cannot apply dicamba. This is not a product that can be applied with an aircraft anyway, so it can only be applied by ground vehicle. But if there is an indication of a temperature inversion coming, you can also not apply dicamba. And what a temperature inversion is, it's basically in the evening hours when the wind gets real calm and steady. What you have is actually the warm air and the cool air flipping over. And so you have these, basically it's this turbulent air function is what it is, and that actually will lift the chemical, the dicamba chemical, even after it's been applied, and potentially carry that downwind. And so, you know, do wind turbines affect that product or do they not? I can't say that I have found anything specifically identifying that, and I think that's very likely because we've only been using this dicamba product on soybeans for 2 years, and those regulations have changed. We're going into the third season and we're going into our third set of regulations on how we can apply it because that is a learning process.
And if you cannot use that, what type of economic detriment is it to the crop then?
You tell me. You know, essentially, it's going to it could potentially alter what beans we're planting, and what what chemicals they're resistant to. It's unknown. It really is. So, and I think the hard, you know, going back to what Glenn was saying about spraying, the challenging part is, you know, what potential production or economic losses. So not just it's going to cost more to fly this field of wheat, but if we can't fly it because our neighbors have surrounded us with wind turbines, what production loss do we put on that, and how are we addressing that? And so I think where kind of this is all going, and I think it goes back to at the state level, is a lot of those things can actually be addressed with proper setbacks. I don't know how familiar you guys are with this House Bill 2273, but it really is just addressing setbacks for non-participating landowners and residents. So it actually talks about cities and airports as well. So it's a 3-mile setback from an airport, 3-mile, give a copy of it, Stacy, make sure I'm saying this right. 3-mile setback, it talks about feet. 3 miles from an airport, 1.5 miles from a residential property or public building, 3 miles from a state or federal wildlife refuge, public hunting area, or public park, and then 1/4 mile from any non-participating property line. So currently, I think that it'd be fair to say that those setbacks are significantly greater than what we have in place today. And a lot of the concerns, not all of them necessarily, but a lot of them, you know, the issues with noise on residential properties and property value, it's hard to really put numbers on that, but we can put a number to the setbacks to, you know, that's a more strategic approach in addressing property value questions. The concerns about agricultural spraying application, the proper setbacks, I think we can start to limit the effects of that on those non-participating landowners.
And I'd just like to add, I'd just like to challenge the county commissioners to protect the non-participating landowners. I mean, I don't care what other people do on their properties or how they make that property make money, as long as it don't affect me and how I make money on my property. And I think that's just really important.
And I think, to echo what Chase said, it's not that we're trying to make a stance to keep the wind farms from ever coming to Marion County, but simply, if we choose not to participate, protect us.
Stacy?
One more thing, most states now do have a renewable energy mandate that they are working toward, a goal that they're working toward. And I am worried that since this project, the energy is going out of state, when we do have to come to terms with our goals for renewable energy, we are selling off some of that land that could be used in our state for our own benefit. And we're pretty much, we're going to have more problems, I think, down the road when we are just giving this out of state and not getting any real benefits to our county.
Okay, Mr. Corner?
If I understand right, Sedgwick County has put a moratorium on any new wind projects or proposals or anything. With how you guys have had to deal with the wind farm in the north part of the county, is that anything you guys have considered? Not to totally throw it out of the ballpark someday, but for now, to get some better road plans as like the road and bridge report and stuff like that, things that you guys have had to deal with. Has that crossed your mind?
I have actually studied, McPherson County also put a moratorium on, and I have a copy of it.
Reno also.
Oh, okay. I have a copy here of Sedgwick counties, and I also have a copy of McPherson's, and yes, I have. And I have talked to the commissioners and some of the other people in those counties. And one of their concerns was their new 800 system that they put in. Now, I also took it upon myself to call our TBS Electronics, and I spoke to Brad Garber, who has our 800 system, but not only that, but our radios that we have. We already have a problem in our county with signals that we're not being able to get with our fire departments and other people. And so I had quite an extensive conversation with this man, and he is very concerned about us putting anything that could obstruct the line of sight and obscure what little signal we have, or areas where we have this problem. And he said he's very concerned, and he said that as a county we should also be very concerned until we do a little more study on that. You know, we do have a substantial financial investment in these radios, and that affects the safety of our people. So that was, after talking to him, he was pretty knowledgeable on what was going around. Of course, the people in McPherson, they have the Harris radios, we have the Motorola, but that really is irrelevant, but it's just the way we're also set up. We need to probably check that out.
Is that something you guys would consider, though, moratorium until House bill?
We haven't discussed it as a commission yet, just individually. She's done her research, I've done mine, and so that's, and Kent's probably done his too, but we haven't sat and discussed that yet.
That's why we're here listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I need to see the people that showed up to voice their opinions about that.
Appreciate it.
College query.
Okay, anyone else?
If I may, just speak to a couple of the concepts that came
Name,
up.
please, for everybody else.
Jesse Hopkins, Vice President of Development at National Renewable Solutions, the developer for Expedition Wind. A couple of things that came up through the conversation, and I appreciate the ability to be here and listen to it. One of the things that was mentioned was eminent domain. This project is a private project. It does not have any ability for eminent domain at all. In fact, if we had Westar build the interconnection and own the transmission line down to the interconnection point, they would in fact have eminent domain. But we chose to build this project privately all the way through the interconnection point. So all the agreements for Gentai, which are not 100% sealed up yet, but I will say that the Gentai, or the transmission line that goes to the point of interconnection, that will all be on private agreements agreed by the landowners. We spoke about decommissioning in the foundations. It's one of the requirements in the CUPs, the WEX district, that and the decommissioning agreement, that when turbines are taken down ultimately, that the foundations are ground down to a certain depth so that all farming activities can occur, above that point. So, that ranges in the range of 32 to 42 inches. Now, we are yet to negotiate our decommissioning agreement and all the other agreements that go along with the conditional use permit, but that would of course be part of that. part of that bundle. We mentioned raptors and concern for eagles. That is absolutely a concern. Projects like this don't get very far with financing or permits without having assessments done, environmental assessments done. And so we are and have been in the process of studying this project for, I want to say, about 3 years. While we've owned the project, approximately a year worth of avian studies and raptor studies. So that is a very important issue that we have to clear with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife as well. So there's a lot of oversight around that with a lot of ramifications should there be issues. There was discussion about the sound of turbines, and at the setbacks that are required at the with the WEX district currently at 1/4 mile, if you take that sound from a wind turbine and extrapolate it down to a house, you're talking about 45 decibels. And so 45 decibels, in fact, can you hear the HVAC system? It's going to be about 45 decibels. 800 system, it's a I'm sorry?
I said it's not even close. I live right in the middle of them.
Yeah, I can't speak to what other projects are held to.
Let him speak until he's finished.
The 800 system, also very important. The infrastructure that's already existing in a community is, projects like this have to respect that and not affect the use and enjoyment of those systems. So there's a company that we do all of these communication studies, including the MCC, and this project has done a preliminary study. However, we don't have the final footprint. We won't have a final footprint unless you all are in agreement with a conditional use permit anyways. But those studies so far gave us the line of sights that you spoke of. They're called Fresnel zones, and away from all of those Fresnel zones, because we understand and respect that if we affect those, we have to rectify that situation as a project. It's an exposure issue to the project. And then the last thing that I wanted two more things I wanted to mention real quick. Energy out of state. We don't have an agreement to send our power out of state. In fact, this project very likely will be keeping our power in state. And in that event, the pricing from these projects is very, very low, and we all benefit from it in our electricity bills. But the last thing that I'd like to speak to is just that, aerial spraying, I hunt around these, I have family who farms around these, and so I'm very familiar with it. I understand that there can be some pilots are going to be less in favor of flying around them, and I totally understand that. I'm yet to find somebody who is prohibited from spraying their ground. That doesn't mean that situation doesn't exist out there. I'm just unaware of it. But the one piece of that we talked about, the dicamba, and I don't know how this affects the conversation that you're having around wind speeds, but a wind turbine doesn't kick in, we call it cut-in speed, until the earliest of about 3.5 meters per second, which is about 7.8 miles per hour. Now, and more commonly, they cut in more around the 5 meters per second, so we're talking somewhere in the 9 miles per hour. With that, I'm here and available. I very much want to hear concerns and if there's ways to talk about this. We've not yet filed. We expect to file hopefully at the end of the month, and I know we'll have a very full conversation at that time as well. So, very briefly, the last meeting that we attended was last week here. Patrick Hellstring, the president and CEO of National Renewable Solutions, was here. And subsequent to that meeting, an article was published, and I just want to be very clear. This project is not siting any turbines south of 50 and west of 77, or east of 77. That is the tall grass heartland. We understand the moratorium issues. We respect it. We diligenced this project for about 9 months before we acquired the project. We very much understand the sensitivity around it and respect it. We understand it's a voluntary moratorium. We're voluntarily saying we're not developing it. Thank you very much.
Stacy, I think you had a comment?
Can we ask questions concerning
Yeah.
that? I'm asking what happens in those decommissionings of the turbines if your company goes bankrupt or if the government doesn't renew subsidies to subsidize these winds at 40% or these wind projects at about 40%. I think is what it is now. 60. Oh, debatable.
Can you address that?
Sure, I can attempt to address that. The first question was, what happens if we go out of business or something, I guess? And in that case, the agreement that we have with the county, or that we will have with the county, provided we get that far, is a decommissioning agreement that posts a bond to ensure the removal of that infrastructure.
Is it going to take into account inflation in time and
I
the
mean,
lifetime of the lease?
You have to
I would
speak
hope
with
you
your
really-
commissioners on that.
I guess my, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Correct me if I'm not wrong, but the decommissioning that the county signs is for the county land, for the roads. The individual property owners should have their decommissionings in their contracts, if I'm not, because we can't decommission somebody's private property. So the bond that you're putting out with us is entirely separate as to what's happening to these people.
Our contracts have the pari passu, they're in agreement with the county decommissioning agreement.
Clarify that.
So
Because if we're gonna have money, if you're gonna decommission through the county to decommission private property, then I wanna know that up front, because then I need to know the expense that we're gonna be faced with years down the road, so we can get a proper bond or something in
Yeah,
place.
I'd have to have the, I'd have to look at that contract and deal with that, when we
But that's
get there,
not the
because
way
we
it
don't
was.
have a contract right now, so.
With the county.
Right.
But you do
Right.
with the city, and I wanna just add,
With the ci- I'm
there's
sorry,
one more
with the
thing, and then
city.
I'll shut up. You had mentioned about the decommissioning that you thought was about 36 inches to 42 to tear out those foundations. But then I think I heard you say that you're still working on that that's not in place. But that should already be in those leases that those people signed. In most cases, it should already be established how deep you go.
Yeah, we have, our agreements are always, we always take into account the ability to farm, and so, do you know what that is, by chance, Liz? In Minnesota, it's 42, 48 inches, depending on where it's at. I've seen as low as 24 in New Mexico. I believe I saw 32. I'd have to go back and check, however.
Are so different leases are different?
No, all the leases are the same. All the terms
Okay,
and
you just
leases
don't
are
know.
the same.
You just don't know what's in their contracts here right now.
Yeah, that number I
Okay.
have to check.
All right. I just want to make sure that the people aren't thinking that that's still to be negotiated, because that's already been negotiated when you went to the property owners.
Yeah, it is included in our contract,
Okay.
that's true. And anybody who's got a contract here can point to a decommissioning agreement inside that contract.
Okay, just a couple more questions. Sharon, did you have?
There are also some provisions in our county zoning regulations regarding decommissioning of turbine bases and towers.
Well, that's regulations, and I fully understand that, but the question was, when they pull out, your regulations aren't gonna hold up when they pull out. So I got that. That's rules.
Speaking of noise, Chase, you said 45 decibels on the, so there's an ISO standard that recommends, it's recommendations for community noise limits. In rural communities, the daytime decibel limit is 35, evening is 30, and nighttime is 25. And I know we're not all familiar with decibels, but an increase of 10 decibels, so from, if you would, a noise that's 35 decibels and a noise that's 45 decibels, 45 decibels would be perceived as twice as loud as 35.
Okay, Larry.
I have just a quick question, Larry Larson. I work with a gentleman who lives up in the Tampa area. He didn't get any windmills on his property, but he signed a "I'm not going to sue you" piece of paper for $1,000 a year, which prohibits him from complaining about the noise in his area. If the noise factor is so low, why would something like that have to be created? To you, sir.
I'm sorry, so you're saying that there's an issue with
A
the
gentleman,
sound?
a gentleman that I work with has windmills all around him. He didn't get any on his property. The organization up north had him sign a piece of paper, and he was willing to do so for $1,000 a year for a period of time, each year, $1,000, not to complain or sue about the noise level at his house. If the decibels are low enough that it's not a problem, why would another wind company, or possibly you, look into that possibility?
I can say that our project offers, they're called community development consent agreements, and that's a way of creating more community oriented project. And so I don't think any agreements that we have say you can't complain about the sound. I mean, there's a consent to allowing for the development of a project, but I'm not familiar with any sound agreements.
Yeah, his piece of paper specifically says for $1,000 a year, he won't complain at all, period, in any way, because of the decibel noise.
Yeah, and I will say that different turbines have different levels of sound, and so
Okay, we're gonna take about 2 more, and then we're gonna have to move on to the agenda, so Stacy, you got a comment?
I do. There's more than just decibels that come off of these. It's the inferred sound, and I would hope that we could do a study on that, and that the company could also do a study on that. The 45 decibels coming from them is an average. Our actually current WEX agreement says, in its Article 27, the audible noise created by the WEX shall not exceed 55 decibels at all times, measured at the property line of any non-participating property within the boundary of the project. I would just, that's another thing I'd like to revisit, maybe our current zoning regulations, because 55 decibels is well above the rural standard, or the rural recommendation of a livable, tolerable level, and they're just not having that.
Mr. Lippert.
Okay, Glenn Lipke again. We're talking about our hearing, and that's one of 5 senses. My eyesight is very important to me, and speaking from an aesthetic point of view, some of us would prefer not to see these things, and we're going to have to look at them during the daytime. We're going to have to look at beacon flashing red lights. I can see the ones from my driveway, and I'm at 1526 Cans. I can see the ones up north. That's 20 miles, and I can see the whole horizon of red lights. Stacy tells me that they changed the position of their house because they wanted the picture window facing the southeast instead of having to watch Tampa's lights, which are 20 miles away. Instead, now they got the foundation built, and they're going to have to watch them 1.5 miles from their place. So I know it's a subjective argument, and maybe a subjective argument doesn't go very far because it's one person's eyes, and beauty is in the eyes, eyes of the beholder. But for me, the aesthetic is very important. The comment was made by Randy that we have a beautiful county. We've been here, I farmed 5 generational ground and soon to be 6 generational ground that was homesteaded here in 1874. And there's something pristine and something historical and something appreciative of being on that ground and seeing hedgerows that our forefathers planted in 1874 and a road. And sure, we have to put up with high line wires and things that came after the fact, or a pumping oil derrick or something like that, but not at hundreds of feet up in the air times 95 or 100 or whatever is proposed here. So we're going to have to look at that, and that is subjective, but so is hog smell. And for the person who makes his money with hogs, he says, I like that smell. That's the smell of money in the bank to the hog farmer. But to the guy who doesn't raise hogs, it's a very offensive smell. So that's the subjectivity. So one person says, I like the looks of windmills because I can take a check to the bank because I've got 3 of them on my property. The other guy says, I don't want to look at them from now till kingdom come. And even though you have a decommissioning agreement, I don't think that in my lifetime or the next generation's lifetime anything's going to be coming down after it's once been put up. And we're going to have to look at them forever in that sense. I drove to Albuquerque, New Mexico for a funeral back in October, and I saw a lot of wind farms between my address and Albuquerque, New Mexico. Most of those look like they're in places where you would, where it seemed reasonable to have a wind farm. And you drive 5 miles between one farmstead and another farmstead. Or it was a hilly, grassy area, and you go, you know, I'm not sure how they make money in those hills, but if they can get some revenue from a wind farm, that looks kind of appropriate. And if you go to Belmont, when you're going to Fredonia and Branson, Missouri, you see a wind farm out there southeast of El Dorado. It kind of looks appropriate there. But for the purpose of a blue stem that's standing this high, or a prairie chicken, or the flight pattern of a Canadian goose, or a nest of a pack rat, you're going to say there's a moratorium and we can't put a wind farm up there for those creatures. But for us as human beings who have sight, who have hearing, who have taste and smell, we don't care. That's kind of the impression that you get if we won't do it in the Flint Hills because of whatever reasoning, and whether you agree or don't agree. So consider, even though it is subjective, but my eyesight is very precious to me, and I'll spend a lot of money going to Colorado to stand on top of Pikes Peak and look over the vista and say, oh, wow, ooh, look at that. And I don't have to look at some obstruction in the way of my view. And so I'll spend money for that. Why wouldn't I sacrifice a check in the mail from this wind farm so I can look out of my picture window and say, isn't that pretty? Look what I've got out here. I've got a cornfield, I've got a soybean field, I've got a hedgerow, I've got a deer stand. I don't want to sit in my deer stand and hear whoosh, whoosh, whoosh all morning long. I want to hear the birds, I want to see the squirrels, I enjoy nature. And I want to enjoy that aspect of the serenity that we have. So consider even the subjective. Thank you.
Go ahead.
My first question to the general public here is, how many of you, by raise of hand, followed our Planning Zoning Commission when rules was changed here between 2015 and today? Anybody followed it at that time? I know there's a guy right back there that did, and Diane did, but this is, I didn't see nobody else's hand besides Sharon. She was working here some of that time. There was not an in-person come to the meetings to say anything about expanding our zone. And I'm as dumb as anybody about planning and zoning. I'm not hep on planning and zoning for Marion County. It can work against you, and it can work with you. You can go both ways. I will say this project, wind farms, has been a thing since I've been a commissioner, and I started back in 2005. But it was being developed by the Planning and Zoning Board, and that Planning and Zoning Board spent many, many hours developing a place which happened to be somewhat in this area, right through here. And they had a circle. At that time, what was the limits? And so, at that time, Larry alluded to it, the windmills at that time was littler. As these 10 years have progressed, I don't know, somebody that maybe you're a professional at it, you could tell me what the size was back then 10 years ago and what it is today. And I know there's a difference, they say. And so we're looking at a lot bigger things, and you're talking, I think, Jeremy, you mentioned some of our rules and things. I think they was put in place for the smaller places, smaller windmills at that time. So, yeah, maybe we're behind time. I have to agree with that. It's good to see y'all. I mean, we don't know how anybody feels till they come and say something, or call us on the phone, which I've spent a few hours on the phone, even have a picture of your house here right on this, too. So thank you for the invite that you're building. We've got, as we said, Diane talked about Sedgwick County and some of the counties around us is doing something to hold off wind farms, moratoriums and things like that. We have not sat and discussed it as a commission. I had Tina, and thank you, Tina, for bringing McPherson counties. She gave us an email about McPherson's. I've got them all. We've all got them on our computers here. What their moratorium was about. Some of them was even in the transmission line. They put their setbacks farther back for transmission lines, which will be built from this thing too. So probably, yeah, we probably do need to look at some of our rules and update our rules and some things like that. Some of the other questions was smaller turbines, larger turbines, decommission. We started on the original project with Rex where the county held the money for this decommission for each windmill. So much money was held in the county coffers at that time, originally. That was how we started. We didn't know no better. With the lawyers that we hired and things like that, you get the money so that when 30 years down the road, the county holds the money for that time. If it's, we didn't know what to set aside for each hole to demolish the things at that time. So that's how this project started with Rex, and it's changed, I think. We've heard the project up north come in, and they didn't even come to us. They went to you, the landowners, and they wanted to decommission with you, the landowners, didn't want us involved, which different ways of doing things. So there's all kinds of things we got to take into consideration here. I'm concerned about we don't follow things enough, and I'm guilty as you are, of what's going to happen to us until I want to build a house here. Oh, I can't do it on 3 acres. And that happened in 1992. Yeah, 1992 when the sanitarian come out, her job, said, Randy, I can't let you build this house here on this property. But that was with planning and zoning because I didn't follow the rules, didn't even know what was going on until after it's in effect. I think that's what's happened to you folks today on windmills in some of your area. I myself feel that we as commission have till the 28th to decide whether we want to let our planning and zoning commission make sure that they hear everybody here, not just in 30 days. I understand the program, this is how they come, they're ready, they've got their line or things in a row, but there's concerns that you guys are bringing up that maybe we don't have in a row. So I think it's the commission's, I'm going to challenge the commission, I guess, is that do we do something to make sure that we are ready for everything that's coming at us here? Whether we put a moratorium on for 90 days, 6 months, just to make sure we're ready for the progress of this project.
Okay, one final comment.
I'm Charles Lowen.
Okay.
I want to thank you for just talking about that. And I know I've had people call you, and you will be getting more. All you guys will. I'll guarantee you that. You like to be called at midnight or 1 o'clock.
I won't. I'll tell you the same as I tell others. If they can't call me respectable, which hey, I want to thank the people that's called me for respectability. I've had the greatest respectability of any people calling on any projects, and I've had more calls on this so far than any other thing. The oil line, the gambling, all the things we've put in front of this county, I've had more calls on this project right here.
We try to tell them that. We're
Yes.
not fighting. We're
Right.
not mad. We want
And I can echo that comment. We appreciate speaking to all of you. Good civilized discussion. We gain a lot out of it, and so we appreciate that.
I want to thank everybody for showing up. You notice you got a lot of guys 30, 40 years old here. Got families coming along. They're going to take your place on it.
May I say
Keep
one
that in
more
mind.
thing?
Wait a minute. I'd like to thank one guy over here that caught me over the corner over here. He's in the same section as you are. We found out that we graduated the same year together. We didn't know one another till the other day. So.
I ran around with you for years.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, Diane, go ahead and make your
I
comment.
want to say, in response to what Randy said about the planning and zoning, when this all came down last year and they changed all the zoning, Articles 27, 19, and I can't remember the other one, I was at a lot of those, and I will tell you exactly what, those were driven by the attorneys of the wind farms. You had Rex Savage's attorneys there, and you had Tradewind's attorneys there. And they went through each one of those articles word by word, okay? You don't know what you don't know. I was there as a resident and as a new commissioner, just for information. I didn't know the questions to ask. We never had a wind turbine before. When they told me 0.5 decimals, what does that mean to me? Nothing. So when you get into this right here, that being our first rodeo, and what I witnessed at that planning and zoning, and again, who was driving it? It was the lawyers of the wind company. We didn't have residents who were knowledgeable because we didn't know what we didn't know. So yes, I agree 100%. Our zoning needs to be, we need to relook at that. learning now in hindsight, now I understand some of it, not all of it, because there's a lot of it that I don't. And for the health of our county, I think we owe it to all of our people to put a moratorium on and really see what we're getting into going forward. That's just my opinion.
Just for clarification, who was over that planning and zoning committee? And
Over it? Nobody.
who represented the county at the time?
Nobody.
Well, our county attorney, and then there was.
No, it
there
was
some-
Mr. Yearout
Yeah.
was the one who was there, but that's
Yeah.
their attorney, their advisor.
The Planning and Zoning Commission has a consultant that works with them.
Yeah,
on
Mr.
a regular
Yearout.
basis.
Mr. Yearout, but Mr. Yearout compared wind turbines to cell phone towers. That's where he got the majority of his, that was his focus, and that's where, what his comparison was. And I remember sitting there hearing that. And it's like, oh, okay. So, I mean, we do have to go back, in my opinion, go back
What
to
did
drawing board.
Emma Talkman do for the county in that capacity?
She was
She was what?
She was a director, too.
Yeah, and who does she work for now? Just
Trade wind.
right.
I mean, it is what it is.
Right. It is what it is. I
Right.
just,
So, can you guys just clarify what that process was when we changed zoning regulations? Are they more strict now than they used to be? Are they more lenient now than they used
More
to be?
lenient.
No,
And what was that process? Because we obviously didn't raise our hands when you
Right.
asked that question.
It started as this area right here, and then I believe due to not being processed, no action taken through the years by this project, another company come in and asked for some footprints to be raised, or just to put some Met tires up here in this area. And we allowed them to put some Met tires up in this area because at that time it wasn't done, wasn't complete. So then after this deal here, I think the planning and zoning, and you said in a couple of the meetings, you said, and listened to them, and did they have anybody complain against them at that time? I mean,
There was yes, there
they-
was, yes. As a matter of fact, there was a few residents
Yeah.
from up there that were interested. I can't tell you who they were right now, but the minutes will reflect that.
Yeah.
But yes, there were some people, but again, they did not know what exactly to ask. I mean, the questions they asked were valid questions, but it was a fraction of what should have been addressed.
And then it was opened up, the board decided, they decided to give us a recommendation to open it up to the county.
So the
Ken,
board
thank
made
you for
that-
the extra time.
The board made a
Thank you.
recommendation. Was that a public hearing, or what was the process?
Yeah, there was public hearings in the planning and zoning meetings, yes. And that's where you guys will have the chance, if we don't do a moratorium and it goes through the 28th, and then the next month's meeting, then you guys will have the same chance to represent yourself again. And then they'll make a recommendation, then they'll kick it back to us again for our final recommendation. So there's some more chances to do this, but I think due to timing, and I think we need to take some time ourselves yet today and value what we need to do as a commission, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for everyone, for
Thank
their
you.
input,
Thank you.
information.
Yep, we work for you. Thank you. You bet. Everybody, for the help of the
So
county.
when should we expect you guys to make a decision? By next committee meeting?
In with us, Bud. Good morning, Bud. Okay. Okay, so we're a lot thinner crowd now. Aren't you fortunate now?
Probably.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I'm Randy with
Sure.
All Valley. I'm sure you guys have seen me. I haven't really. Leon had a conflicting meeting this morning and couldn't make it. So first item I brought is the first pay estimate, and we've looked through it based upon our bid schedules and stuff. We suggested you pay it. They're not asking for a lot. The biggest thing is the initial payment of mobilization is based upon completion of 5% of the work. They've got the RCP in, they've got some rock hauled in. We're trying to take this in, the T&M, the extra work that we will address later is not part
Can I
of this.
stop you a second? Can we have them ask to at least move down the hall?
No, I can't shut the door. I tried that. Yeah, you did try that a while back, didn't you? Didn't work. Nope, gotta be open.
While that's going on, let's get these handed out down here.
Nope, they wouldn't let me do that.
One for Tina?
Yeah.
One for Tina.
Anybody, I printed plenty. I made
Okay, good.
10 of them. So, their request is 14,004 minus the 10% retainage, is 12,960. Looking it over, it meets the criteria that we set forth in our specs.
Before we move to KDOT, I guess my concern is we've got a problem, and I dealing with KDHE, and I've seen a lot of projects in different cities in our county that deals with KDHE. One of them right across from my gas station in Peabody, Kansas, where all the ground was removed, lots of money was spent, lots of ground was brought back in to fill the hole where they take the dirt out and take it out and air it out and do all this with it. And then, so I guess my question to you is, what if all the ground's contaminated down there?
Okay. And I can jump down and move to the T&M work, which does involve KDHE and what you're saying. I guess to answer your question, the simplest and the quickest, I would say, we're probably going to owe these boys this money.
Oh, agree.
Okay?
Agree.
So that,
yeah.
Maybe there would be some argument on the amount, but most likely they probably have done $14,000 with it. So let's jump down to where we sit with what we're calling our T&M work, or time and materials work, which is so once it was notified to Call Valley that there was some fuel odor, we had a sample pulled. Call Valley has a registered geologist on staff and geotechnical engineers. So that sample was headed to Lenexa for them to, that's where all of our geotechnical work comes from, is out of the Lenexa office. It was sent to Lenexa for them to evaluate what's the situation here. Right around the time that Lenexa was getting the sample was when somebody notified KDHE. KDHE reached out to Bud reached out to us, we got a hold of KDHE, explained the situation. When the conversation was done, ultimately, they were heading the same direction our geologist was headed, which is, we can't do anything till we know what it is. So at this point, samples were pulled middle of last week. We did ask for a 5-day turnaround on those results. That will be the middle of this week. I believe the 5 days is working days. I would have to check, but my assumption would be working days. So at this point, we don't have lab results. It's through Pace Labs, which has an office in Salina, but is ultimately Kansas City-based lab. So in our conversation with KDHE, they pretty much said that you got to know what is the product to make any decisions. We said, fuel smell, you know what, even he said diesel fuel has changed from the 60s to the 80s to now. It's not the same. Diesel is not the same product. So saying it's diesel for smells like it is irrelevant to them. So we were waiting on those results. The only thing we hadn't done that KDHE requested was we hadn't covered the piles. We've been by. Next day we got a contractor out there to get them covered. So ultimately, the two things KDHE was waiting on is the test results. They were going to do some in-house checking, water table depth, and some of that matters a bunch. And they want to make a site visit. Bud said he thought that they had been in town.
Nobody contacted me.
Yeah, and they haven't contacted us. And who knows? They may have been driving through and say, hey, you know what? Why don't we swing in there and take a look and document for ourselves? So, KDHE hasn't reached back to us after the initial contact because they know we're waiting on lab results. So, otherwise, so going forward, it's really hard to say what. Yeah, you're 100% correct. At this point in time, it's very hard for us to say what is the action going forward. It's all going to be based on what the material is and what KDHE thinks. Ultimately, we have the T&M costs right here that are current to date, and then on here is the material they've stockpiled. So in essence, the only things we're really missing out of this is the placement of that material back. The lab test results, which I don't have wrote down per unit what that is, but it's, in big scheme of things, it's irrelevant. The talk of disposal of the soil that's out there, which is, it depends on what it is. And so, worst case scenario, it has to be hauled off to a landfill, is ultimately. Otherwise, you know, you mentioned reconditioning, that's an option, it all depends.
Sometimes.
It all depends on what, sometimes, it all depends on what it is. And then ultimately removing more. I mean, there's a chance that we have to continue to go deeper. The soils out there are a fat clay that is probably in our best. If it's sand, it just takes off and goes to the water, and ultimately that's what KDHE's worried about. KDHE made a comment of possibly a monitoring well. All things that, again, come back to my statement of we got to wait on the test results and then find out KDHE's direction on it actually is.
Yeah.
I can hand out where we are with T&M currently if you want to see where budget-wise. We told you what Call Valley was estimating. We're getting awfully close to what we were estimating already due to the added fees of having the contractor help us with covering stockpiles and digging a hole. The tests were taken on the stockpile, on the surface, and then we dug down 3 to 4 feet and took another test so we could start trying to get an idea to how much seepage we had out.
I just viewed from the road, from the outside the yellow tape. I didn't get out and look at the dirt that looked like is the area that you got maybe an 8 by 8 area or a 10 by 10 or a little bigger.
I tell you, it's about 8 to 10 foot wide and most of the width of the hole. And again, it's really hard to tell. The soils are a fat clay; they're a blackish clay already, and so them having a hint, with the sample that got brought to Junction City that I got to see. You could grab a handful out of it and not smell anything, and you could dig around, grab another one, and there's a smell here. So it really, and the guy said the same thing on site. There are times when you're standing there and you couldn't get any aroma, and other times the bucket would go by and it was obvious. So.
Well, I guess my biggest fear for the commission is this is just a small part here. We're getting started, and this is 11,000 total so far for this. I also got in mind maybe if we hit any more, 100 to 200,000. I mean, project in Peabody wasn't cheap. I know that, and I think it was over 100,000 for 30 by 30 hole, about 30 foot deep. I don't know. I'm just
Definitely could be a budget buster.
well. It's a whole lot of things that we don't know enough yet to know what's going to happen as we go forward. But well, I don't know. I've sure got my setbacks on it and bringing things that maybe we shouldn't do. However, the property's ours, and it was bought back whenever for whatever reasons, and we're going to have to deal with it sometime. Even if the building come down, probably we will still have to deal with it.
Still have to do that.
Yeah. So. But to take soil out and compact it back and build a new building on it, I don't know. You can do it, and it'll work. But I just got my setbacks about it. I mean, my feelings about it. So
ultimately, we're going to try to supply you guys with as much data going forward to help you make a decision on where this project goes and how this ends up. Until we know what it is,
right.
And our geologist can give us some direction, and KDHE can give us some direction.
Well, I guess my final statement will be: is this same building and the main building that we're going to build can all be put somewhere else if we had to at this point.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So keep that in mind, Commission.
If we have to do that, now that you said that, we'd still have to clean that up.
We still got to do most likely.
We own the property.
We own the property, Diane. It's probably KDHE's going to look at us as the. I just think that.
You're guilty.
Yeah, and we're not guilty, but yet we are guilty.
Yeah,
We're guilty by buying it.
Yeah. So that's just the way it's part of, and we're going to have to realize that. But boy, I don't know. I guess my worst fear is if we get going through here, and here's another hole, and here's another hole, and all of a sudden we've got a lot of area here, and that's my worst fear. And
Yes, and I've been around some of this to where the removal of all the contaminated soil, you can be chasing, a squirrel down a hole. That you're trying to find where does this end. There's no way to know the answer to that question.
Correct, correct, I agree, 100%. And then knowing that it was already built onto, whether they disturbed some, the part of the transfer station was built on there on the west side, so we don't know. I don't know where the original footprint was for this electric power plant, and when you're dealing with electric, I was worried about PCBs and stuff like that. I don't know if that's even possible there. I don't know that much about electricity, but that's.
And that's all part of this testing.
And what fueled the power plant? What type of fuel?
And it's before me, I don't know.
You know what?
When I toured it back in the early '60s as a third grader, it was diesel motors. Is what was powered.
And we have the old plans. I'm not gonna tell you I sat down and studied them because I didn't feel like it was that relevant, but we did look through them, and there's nothing that jumped out at me where we currently are to say we went through the historical timeline on Google Earth, which unfortunately only goes to 90s. But there's a lot of times we figure things out historically through that they'll have a snapshot at 90, 93, 95 and stuff, and you can look and see and go, hey, that there was a building there that nobody seems to remember, but in this case, nothing showed up along those lines.
So I'm taking for granted when the county purchased it from the private individuals, there was no environmental study done.
I'm not going to comment, Ken. I've heard a lot of comments, but I don't know what's truth and what's not truth and stuff like that.
That would have only been, what, how long have we owned that?
Well, when they built it, it's when they built it before they sold it to the county, see?
Right, but I mean, what year did the county purchase it?
92 is when, 92, because 2000.
Because I know in that time, frame,
2002, yes.
There was commercial environmental studies, because I was on a school board.
Yes.
In 1988, when we had to dig out underground tanks and haul dirt off.
Yes, yes.
So I'm just questioning why the commission at that time didn't say, hey, buy it based on environmental.
There's a lot of other factors too, I think on that. I think the lawsuit was the biggest, threatening of a lawsuit, and that was the biggest factor for move on down the road.
Whatever it is.
But yeah, I think we're stuck, but 2002, because we ended the 10-year loan in 2012, if I remember right, the last payment somewhere in there, so.
And that's a question I plan to address with KDHE when we find out what is this, what's your guys' course of action for getting help with the issue? Because there was some comments made here and there that we found the underground tank, somewhat KDHE would help take responsibility for it. There's a lot of things there that were kind of just mentioned as side notes on the phone conversation that he didn't elaborate on because it wasn't,
right.
At that point in time, they'll be able to help us with some of those answers. So
I think it'd be a fair assumption maybe for the commission to say that we are concerned and we want you to be known of this so that we are concerned about the whole project and what's going to happen in the future here.
Absolutely. No, and we, I had conversations with Bud about possibly being here again next week with the test results. Ultimately, the test results aren't going to mean anything to you without an explanation from KDHE. So I'm probably not going to come back until we have an answer as to what KDHE's direction is. Looking that we get the test results Thursday, we may not have an answer Monday for you guys. So just so you know, it might have to push yet another week.
Well, irregardless, we have a bill in front of us that probably needs to be paid, so.
Bud brought to my attention, it says city stuff. We will get that corrected going forward. If you guys want to, when you sign, just cross out and state it.
City engineer?
Yeah. And then it says date estimated approved by city commission. That was, this must have been what was in our specs and that.
So you push that button, it comes out.
It didn't get changed.
Okay.
So I will get with Cody and get that updated so that going forward it is proper.
Is this a numbered pay estimate, or do we have numbers assigned to them, Tina? Is that how we? gonna do this, or how would we pay estimate number one, or pay estimate number two, or how would we
Yeah,
go forward?
usually we would, start a numbering of those, yes.
Absolutely, we can, this is obviously number one, and we can get, there's a spot estimate number right on the top, up there just below
Yep.
the date, so we just need to write that in, and we can start getting that updated, as we go forward.
I'd make that motion to go ahead and pay the $12,960 for the first pay estimate here.
I'll second it.
Okay, been moved by Randy, seconded by Alan, to pay the first estimate of $12,960. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, anything else?
Yes, I have one other, we've had a change order request submitted for the HVAC. I'm not bringing that change order to you guys, I'm bringing information for you to mull over and think about. There's no hurry on this, but next week or so, I'm sure they would appreciate it. Ultimately, I guess the easiest way to state this is, Call Valley does not recommend this change order, but this was something the contractor wanted to put forth to you guys to review, and ultimately it's your guys' products in the long run. So what I've got is his proposal, and then I have got an email reply from our MEP engineer for what he says. Well, this is what they're asking and their ultimate response. Ultimately, there is a reduction of $2,850. So I guess the question will come: is the discount worth what you lose? The contractor kind of stated as though what our mechanical engineer was proposing was a higher end product than they felt needed to go in. What you lose, in layman's terms, is you would lose all heat and AC in the storage area, and then you would lose direct heat or direct AC in the bathroom. And you can read what the engineer's response was. He doesn't believe that what they're proposing for the AC will work efficiently. So the bathroom in the summertime would wind up warm. And then they're simply wanting to do an electric heater. They didn't really state what that electric heater was for the bathroom. I'm assuming it would be a wall electric heater or a baseboard. I didn't ask, and I probably should have, specifically what they meant by electric heat. But what the MEP originally proposed, what's on the plans, is these ductless units that would give an independent unit for the storage room, for the bathroom, and for the office.
That's what you originally had?
Yes, that's what the plan states. So this would be changing from that. So more or less, this was simply a chance to give you guys time to read through what's here, maybe educate yourselves, and try to make a decision on is the just shy of $3,000 discount worth.
The VRF system, is that the floor heat?
No, that's the. I would have to see what. I'd have to look up. I am not a mechanical engineer, but be a variable register furnace, something like that. That's the system where you have independent heat in each room. You would have a unit in the office that supplies heat and AC on its own thermostat. You'd have a unit in the bathroom that does the same. You have a unit in the storage room that does the same. So.
How big is the storage room? But I don't have one.
10 by 8 by 10. I think it's
Not very big, is
It
It doesn't need to be very big.
And that's one where maybe that part of their change order somewhat makes sense to me. That would be a decision if you're ever going to have paints or chemicals that need to be temperature controlled. I don't know if heating and AC in that room is
The only
necessary.
thing that's basically going to be stored in the storage room would be the grease and
So you want that up at temperature, so when you go to use it, it isn't frozen? And even then, it's gonna be in the shop area, the door left open.
Right.
There's multiple ways to look at this, and this is why ultimately we felt like we should probably give you guys a chance to.
Right now, it's
not
kept in
make
the
a
office
snap.
area because there is no heat out in the shop area. If we've got the shop heated, it's not gonna be, bitterly cold there. The storage room is right there in the shop area where the heat's gonna be, so I feel it doesn't really need to have any heat in that area. The bathroom, yes, it needs to be heated and cooled, to a certain extent. I mean, you don't have to have it to where it's, just so it's comfortable.
I didn't pay attention. What did I hand out? Did I give you guys the email? I did not.
No.
I'm sorry. I handed out the one and got to trying to explain what is going on here. This is the email response from our mechanical engineer. His explanation. I'm not sure. Is that what they?
I mean, you could look at
Still doesn't say what
Yeah,
VRF officially stands for. I'm almost sure it's variable, but then past that, I don't.
I mean, my thought was is if we're doing away with the individual rooms, we could put something in the wall to bring the cool air into the bathroom. I mean,
Which
if you're in there for a long time, you have a problem.
Which is what they are suggesting. The trick is he says, I'm not 100% sure this will work at all.
Yeah.
But he gets what they're
Well, it
trying.
says there, add electric heat in the restroom with the duct transfer from the office to draw in AC in the warmer months. So there would be some cool air in the.
Well, my thought was is if we do that, it's going to have a fan holding it in.
And that, I think that's the part that he says he's not sure how successful it would be.
I guess I'm totally confused. I don't understand why we're doing separate heating in different rooms and areas, and, I mean, how efficient is that? I mean, I guess I'm just lost.
You could turn them off, one room, and not ever use it.
So in the bathroom, you turn it off, when you leave in the wintertime, you turn the heat off?
Oh, no, you leave it on in wintertime so it would freeze,
I mean, you're gonna have a different control in the office than you are in the shop.
Right. And see, the bathroom is gonna be in the shop area, but
Right.
the door's still gonna be closed into the bathroom because we don't want a bunch of dirt
I
and stuff
see
going
that.
into the bathroom.
We didn't change anything on the air conditioning part of it.
Well, you did in the fact that they're going to a single ductless system just for the office with a vent register to draw air, the cool air from the office to the bathroom. Ultimately, when I read this, what I got is the mechanical engineer saying the bathroom isn't going to be 100%. If the office is 70, the bathroom's not going to be 70. Is it going to be cooler in there than it's going to be in the office or in the shop area? Probably. So that's how I read this. And
It's
it's
a bunch of guys.
well,
Every window?
so this is where we wanted to present this to you. Here's what the mechanical engineer said, and you guys get a chance to think about it. Maybe call an HVAC company up yourself and say, hey, this is what we're hearing on this issue. What would be your expertise on it? It's one of those where while they are presenting a option that costs less money, we didn't feel like it's our call though.
But the heating in that it's gonna cost for a little tiny bathroom and a little 10 by whatever, what you said, storage.
Yeah.
I mean, why am I so lost on that? I mean, that just sounds redundant. It just sounds stupid to me. I don't know why. I'm sure I'm missing
As
something
far as
here.
the storage area, it's in the heated shop area, so it's
Yeah, I
gonna
mean, it's
have
gonna
heat.
have
You know,
going
it
in.
doesn't need its individual heating system, as far as I'm concerned. Bathroom, if it needs heat in there to keep the pipes from freezing, which, you know, you can have, like you said, a baseboard unit or whatever they're planning on putting in it. So as far as for air conditioning it, you know, you can draw cool air in from the office area, I would think, you know. So you don't have to have it individually, the only individual thermostat you'd have is set on that baseboard unit, you know, or however it's heated.
So if the doorway is to a heated room, your office room, and you have the door open when nobody's using it, it would be warm in there.
Well,
Or
the
in the
way it's
air
designed,
conditioning, it would be cool in there till somebody goes in and shuts the door, right?
the way it's designed, the door is gonna be in the shop area to get into the
So
bathroom.
ultimately, it's
Oh.
the AC in the bathroom. I mean, really, that's, if you guys don't care about the storage room, which
Right.
is purely up to
Yeah.
probably Bud, I'm assuming, in this room, but if we take that out of the equation, the real question here is do we want the bathroom to have its own AC, or is trying to vent it through the wall, and ultimately, you know, if you kick on the recirculating fan, it's gonna draw that air better. Is that gonna be sufficient cooling the bathroom?
Myself, I think it would be, but, I
High
mean,
production exhaust fan would do a lot, wouldn't it?
yes, yes.
I mean, just.
Yeah, we're splitting hairs.
Yeah,
No, you are, and that's why I wanted you guys to have time to think about it, is because you really are splitting
I
hairs.
mean, I'm just,
Yeah.
It's,
Get the good exhaust fan, not the cheap one.
I think in the end, we're just trying to make a usable space.
Yes,
I mean,
And
yes,
be prudent with how we spend our money.
yes, yes.
you know, we
that's all,
Okay. Thank
all I
you.
got.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys. And I'll be back with news on the site as soon as we have usable information to give you. 'Cause I don't know your backgrounds, but I'm sure the test results from the lab probably aren't gonna tell me much, so they probably won't tell anybody else much. So.
I don't have anything from any of the other departments
Okay.
to report
Thank
on.
you,
Do you
Bud.
have anything for me?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will try to do my best.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's the last thing on the agenda, so do we have any citizen concerns?
Jesse Hopkins Hool again from National Renewable Solutions. I just wanted to make a plea to the commission. If the commission considers any action regarding the previous discussion earlier today, I would just appeal to you we've got about 60 landowner families and about 20,000 acres under control right now with the project who've all decided to participate. And I'd invite you to listen to their comments and concerns as well. Obviously, we had a contingency here today, which is a very good one, but there's another side to it, that's all. So, appreciate it.
And do you know, will they be coming forth to the commission too?
I learned of this, so I think that it's certainly something that we would spread the word for them.
All right.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, we're going to recess through the noon hour and we will reconvene at 1 o'clock. A work session.